Chapter 3201. The beings of the dimensional realm had no idea what was going on in the infernal realm. Even Dai Yu's divine sense could not go any deeper after probing the Nether River. This unforeseen event happened too suddenly. Everyone merely saw Great Emperor Desolate Martial's body being shattered and his essence spirit destroyed by a beam of light from the major world. After Wu Dao's martial soul rushed into the Blood Sea, even Qinglian's martial soul completely lost contact with him. No one knew if she was dead or alive. The Blood Sea seemed to have its own territory that could isolate all probing. Although the ray of light from the Great Thousand World had disappeared, it had penetrated the barrier of the three realms. This would add countless unpredictable variables to the end of the War of the Heavens. Su Zimo vaguely thought of something. However, Wu Dao's martial soul had just suffered a great calamity and no one knew if he was dead or alive. He had not recovered from the shock and his mind was in a mess. At this moment, the Demon Master had already flown into the sky and flew toward the Great Thousand World. The evil emperor looked back at Su Zimo and seemed to want to say something. However, he hesitated and also turned to fly toward the Great Thousand World. The barrier of the three realms had been penetrated. The damage was not big and it was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The reason why the Demon Lord, the evil emperor, the Brahma Ghost Mother, and the others were suppressed in the middle world and could only display the battle prowess of a great emperor was because of this restriction. At this moment, as the barrier between the Great Thousand World and the middle world was broken, the Demon Master, the evil emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother could feel the power from the Great Thousand World. There was a flaw in the rules that suppressed them. The auras of the three were rising rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they had surpassed the Great Emperor level and reached another level. Dai Yu, who was standing in the distance, felt the aura of the Brahma Ghost Mother and her face changed slightly. She was different from the Demon Master and the evil emperor. The Brahma Ghost Mother did not leave immediately. Instead, she raised her head slightly and looked at the Great Thousand World through the hole that was healing at the end of the sky. She seemed to be enjoying it and a smile appeared on her face. As her powers recovered, the wrinkles on her face gradually disappeared. All of a sudden, the Brahma Ghost Mother turned around and stared at Dai Yu in the distance with murderous intent. At the same time, Su Zimo sensed something and suddenly looked toward the heavenly court. He saw the Brahma Ghost Mother turned around and locked her gaze on Dai Yu. Oh no! Su Zimo's heart sank. In the Great Thousand World, the Brahma Ghost Mother was defeated by Dai Yu. In terms of combat power, she was Dai Yu. But at this moment, the barrier between the three worlds had been shattered, and the restrictions that bound the Brahma Ghost Mother had disappeared. Her original strength was rapidly recovering. The Demon Lord had once said that their cultivation bases were above the Great Emperor level. And this strength was enough to annihilate everything in this dimensional realm. Before you was you of you? You. The Demon Master, Evil Emperor, and you would not be a threat to you. However, Wu Dao's tribulation had caused the three realms barrier to shatter. The Brahma Ghost Mother's powers began to recover in the middle world. Su Zimo howled and sprinted towards the heavenly courts like a madman. In the heavenly court, facing the Brahma Ghost Mother, Dai Yu did not run away. She was calm. She knew that she had been locked on by the Brahma Ghost Mother and could not escape. The difference in strength was too great. Dai Yu even had a feeling that the Brahma Ghost Mother in the distance only needed a finger to crush her to death. You just threatened me, the Brahma Ghost Mother said with a smile. The wrinkles on the Brahma Ghost Mother's face had disappeared. She had transformed into a mature and beautiful woman. Her lips were bright red and full of temptation. You probably don't know. Even in the Great Thousand World, there are not many who dare to speak to me in that tone. Those who dare to make a move against me are even fewer. And in this middle world, a little butterfly dares to show off in front of me. How interesting, ha! Suddenly, the Brahma Ghost Mother stopped smiling and slowly raised her head. A sinister and terrifying ghost face appeared behind her. She stared at Dai Yu and asked faintly, "Do you know your crime?" As soon as these words were spoken, the surrounding temperature plummeted. If you do it again, I will attack again, Dai Yu said indifferently. She knew that the Brahma Ghost Mother wanted to kill her. No matter what she said, she could not change the result. At the Brahma Ghost Mother's level, she would not change her mind just because of a few words. The Brahma Ghost Mother glanced at Su Zimo, who was running toward her, and smiled. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. It's a pity that you immortal couple will be separated forever. As soon as his voice fell, the Brahma Ghost Mother attacked. Don't. Su Zimo roared but could not stop this from happening. He could only watch helplessly as the Brahma Ghost Mother's palms slapped down. Dai Yu also turned her head and looked deeply at Su Zimo. It happened so suddenly that the two did not even have time to say a word. There were too many emotions contained in this glance. There was tenderness, reluctance, regret, and longing. This glance was also their final farewell. The Brahma ghost mother only slapped down in the direction of Dai Yu across the void. There was no earth-shattering scene. Dai Yu instantly turned into a cloud of blood mist. The difference in strength was too great. Su Zimo gradually came to a stop and stood on the spot in a daze. He looked at the blood mist in the heavenly courts with lifeless eyes and a dim gaze. It was as if he had lost his soul in an instant. When the human emperor died, he felt incomparable grief. At this moment he could not feel anything. His mind was blank, as if the most important thing in his life had suddenly been lost. This scene was beyond everyone's expectations. When the experts from the 3,000 worlds saw this scene, their eyes widened and their faces were full of shock. Everyone could predict that the War of the Heavens would be incomparably tragic. However, no one expected that after the fat and thin elders, the elder ape, the nine-tailed demon emperor, the divine elephant demon emperor, the human emperor, and many other emperors had died, Great Emperor Araki Takashi was also killed by the power from the Great Thousand Worlds. And now, even Blood Butterfly Great Emperor had perished. Who would have thought that the War of the Heavens would end with the death of two great emperors? Although the War of the Heavens had been won, the price paid was too great. Ghost Mother. A loud shout was heard. The evil emperor's figure reappeared in the heavenly courts. He had seen the changes below and returned. The demon master's figure had almost disappeared. In the clouds, the demon master looked down indifferently at the situation below. His face was expressionless and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. It was as if everything that happened below had nothing to do with him. "Asya, you're late." The Brahma ghost mother had a smile on her face, but she pretended to sigh regretfully. "She's already dead." The evil emperor's face was gloomy and he did not say a word. He glanced at the blood mist and blocked it behind him before looking coldly at the Brahma ghost mother. Chapter 3202. In the middle world, the mark of Dai Yu's Dao seal was gradually dimming and dissipating. After all, Dai Yu was only a great emperor of a middle world and not the demon lord, the evil emperor. These experts from the vast thousand domains could not reach the level of immortality. Sigh. Sighs could be heard from all over the middle world. The dissipation of the Dao seal meant that the great emperor of this era had fallen. This result was beyond everyone's expectations. Because of the persistence of the Araki Takashi Great Emperor and the Blood Butterfly Great Emperor, the countless beings of the middle world were not involved in this catastrophe. Who would have thought that the two of them would end up like this? The two of them were outstanding experts of the past and present, and created an unprecedented era of two emperors. Unfortunately, the person he loves has fallen in front of him. I don't know how much pain junior brother Su must be enduring. Mo Qing stood in Heaven Wasteland Domain, her face full of worry, looking at the lonely figure in the starry sky. On her shoulder, Bing Dai was crying silently. In Bing Dai's heart, the Blood Butterfly Great Emperor had brought countless glory and dignity to her people, and had also sacrificed everything for her people. Yunju sighed softly. Even someone as intelligent as her did not know how to comfort her in the face of this matter. Yen Beichen seemed to think of something, bowed his head and did not speak. Perhaps, only he could empathize and understand the pain in Su Zimo's heart. At this moment, Su Zimo was still standing blankly in the starry sky, his eyes empty, his expression absent-minded, and his soulless appearance faintly made one's heart ache. The Brahma ghost mother's eyes turned and fell on Su Zimo. She licked her red lips and seemed to want to attack again. But she knew that if she attacked, the evil emperor would definitely stop her. There was no winner or loser between the two of them. There was no need to fight to the death for an ant from a middle world. The Brahma ghost mother smiled slightly, no longer lingering, and turned to fly toward the vast thousand domains. For her, killing Dai Yu was as simple as crushing an ant. It was just a casual action. She would not take it to heart and would even forget about it in the blink of an eye. Who would care about an ant that they had trampled to death? The evil emperor looked at the Brahma ghost mother in the distance and did not stop her. Even if she tried to stop him, nothing would happen. At this moment, the evil emperor swept up the blood mist behind him and came to Su Zimo's side. Su Zimo subconsciously looked at her. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to ask something, but he didn't dare to say it. The evil emperor seemed to know what Su Zimo wanted to ask and said expressionlessly, "She's dead." Su Zimo's face was deathly pale. He suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his heart. These three words were like a sharp blade that pierced through his heart. Su Zimo spat out a mouthful of blood, looking miserable. He had long guessed this answer, but he was unwilling to believe it. The difference in strength between the Brahma Ghost Mother and the Brahma Ghost Mother was too great. How could Dayu possibly survive? I've just saved her soul. The evil emperor continued, I'll give you two choices now. First, you can keep her soul by your side, but she won't be able to cultivate, nor will she be able to take revenge. She can only accompany you. Second, I can send her into reincarnation and give her a new life in the Great Thousand World. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He raised his head and looked at the evil emperor with a trace of doubt in his eyes. Of course, he knew about the reincarnation of souls into the 6 paths of reincarnation. However, the conditions for reincarnation were too harsh. It required an expert whose cultivation realm was much higher than the reincarnated person's to set up a trap in advance to have a chance of success. Furthermore, the reincarnation of souls into the 6 paths of reincarnation was filled with countless dangers and variables. No one knew what would happen. However, according to the evil emperor, she could control this matter and bring Dayu back to life in the Great Thousand World. Furthermore, the evil emperor said new life, not reincarnation. The evil emperor said indifferently, before this I couldn't do this. Now that I've recovered some of my strength, I can bring her back to life in the Great Thousand World. Su Zimo thought about it seriously before saying slowly, I choose the second option. The two of them could be together forever with the first option, but it was too unfair and painful for Dayu. Dayu's Tao was not obedient. She could not cultivate or take revenge. To her, even if she lived in the form of a soul, what was the point? Dayu had never depended on anyone in her life. She led the weak butterfly race to rise in the middle world where there were tens of thousands of races. In this epoch, Dayu was not weaker than anyone, including Su Zimo. Dayu attacked the heavens back then for the middle world and to resist the heavenly court. However, it was also for herself. She wanted to explore the Great Thousand World and see the vast world. Hearing Su Zimo's answer, a trace of admiration flashed in the depths of the evil emperor's eyes. Actually, even if Su Zimo chose the first option, she would not be surprised. However, she would feel disappointed. She would also feel wronged for the peerless beauty of the generation Shuedai. You might not have heard what I meant. The evil emperor continued, she will be reborn in the Great Thousand World, not reincarnated. By rebirth, it means that all traces of this lifetime will be erased. After being reborn in the Great Thousand World, she can become any of the 10,000 races and cultivate anew. She will also forget everything about this lifetime, including you. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart ached. Gradually, countless images appeared in his mind. The first meeting between the two of them. Amidst the falling peach blossoms, the slightly sluggish blood-robed woman brought him to the path of cultivation and opened up a magnificent world. The blood-colored figure that stood in front of countless purple-winged eagles in Songlang mountain range. Severely injured and unconscious, someone left a Soraka flower in his body to replace the divine phoenix bone and change his fate. 2 lines of words were left at the bottom of the dragon burial valley. The dragon phoenix true body was reborn and his bloodline phenomenon condensed. The beautiful figure that haunted his dreams appeared before him once more as she smiled at him. The third gift is me. Dayu's rebirth meant that everything between the two of them and all those beautiful memories were about to disappear. You can choose again, the evil emperor said indifferently. Although Su Zimo's heart was pained, he still shook his head and recalled the images and memories of the past. Gradually he smiled. In this lifetime she changed my fate for me. In the next lifetime, it's my turn to protect her. When he heard that, the cold evil emperor was slightly moved as well. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo said, let her be reborn in the Great Thousand World. I'll definitely find her. All right, the evil emperor nodded. I hope to see you in the Great Thousand World. If you have any difficulties in ascending to the Great Thousand World, you can come and look for me with the dreamlike token. It's the white jade pendant that I left for you. Su Zimo seemed to have not heard anything and was still in a daze. Even though he had already made the decision to let the evil emperor help Dayu be reborn in the Great Thousand World, his heart was still filled with reluctance and pain. Chapter 3203. Seeing Su Zimo's state, the evil emperor said lightly, let me remind you. Although the war of the heavens has ended, the middle world is still in chaos and danger lurks everywhere. You'd better be careful. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Normally, after the heavenly court was destroyed, the emperors of the middle world would be able to ascend smoothly and the operations of the middle world would return to normal. However, because Wu Dao's original body had attracted a great calamity, the barrier of laws had been broken and a series of unforeseen events had occurred. Dai Yu's death was only one of them. Although there were still many emperors and living beings of various realms left in the heavenly court, without the master of the heavenly court, the situation had changed. The remaining people could not cause much trouble. Moreover, seeing that the heavenly court had been destroyed and the masters of the heavenly court had died, the remaining emperors of the heavenly court had retreated from the battlefield and chosen to ascend to the great thousand world. After this bloody battle, the living beings of the middle world had suffered heavy losses and could no longer fight. Moreover, the heavenly court had been destroyed and there was no need to continue fighting to the death. The opportunity to ascend to the great thousand world was right in front of them. The emperors planned to cultivate for a while before ascending to the great thousand world. The evil emperor had once said that they had fallen into the middle world because of a great battle that had caused the barrier of the three realms to break. Now that the barrier of the three realms had been pierced again, it meant that the experts of the great thousand world still had a chance to descend. Will the masters of the heavenly court return? Su Zimo asked with a frown. That won't be the case. The evil emperor said, the fiend master and ghost mother have already ascended and their attention will be on them. They won't care about the middle world and... The evil emperor looked up slightly and glanced at the barrier of laws that had been pierced. This hole is negligible to the barrier of the three realms. It's like a speck of dust. With the power of the laws of heaven and earth, it will quickly repair itself. In fact, it was just as the evil emperor had said. The hole that had been pierced through by the Great Tribulation became smaller and smaller in this short period of time. It gradually disappeared and once again disappeared into the clouds. When the barrier of laws was restored, the experts of the great thousand world would not be able to descend. Even if the evil emperor's realm had just recovered, once the barrier of laws was restored, as long as she remained in the middle world, her power would still be restricted and suppressed at the great emperor level. If the danger that the evil emperor spoke of did not come from the greater thousand domains, then where did it come from? Su Zimo's eyes inadvertently caught sight of a black paper floating in the battlefield. It was the legendary Book of Life and Death. Wu Dao's true body was struck by the tribulation, his body and the prison-suppressing cauldron were shattered, and his storage bag was destroyed. Almost everything inside had been reduced to dust. Only this piece of black paper was preserved. Fengdu. Su Zimo grabbed the piece of black paper and couldn't help but think of the master of hell. He's not dead? The Lord of Hell had once said that no one in this world could kill him. Although Wu Dao's original body's consciousness had once entered the netherworld to patrol, he couldn't find any traces of Fengdu's aura. At that time, the war against the heavens was imminent, so he could only give up temporarily. The evil emperor didn't seem to want to talk too much about the Lord of the Underworld. He simply said, "It's not just him." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of something extremely terrifying. His gaze landed on the Avicii hell that had been pierced through by the heaven realm, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Originally, the Avicii hell that the Avicii emperor had created with his own flesh and blood was used to imprison the Master of Flame Skies and the Lord of Hell. But now the Avicii hell had been pierced through. This meant that the Master of Flame Skies and the Lord of Hell had also escaped. Su Zimo's expression turned serious. The evil emperor said, "The Master of Flame Skies has already chosen to be reborn in the greater thousand domains, but the Lord of Hell didn't leave. Instead he chose to be reborn in Hell." The heavenly court had already been destroyed, and the Lord of Hell had escaped from the Avicii hell. Of course he could choose to be reborn in the greater thousand domains. But he chose to stay in Hell. What did he want to do? The evil emperor said, "I won't be surprised if he does anything in the middle world." Anything that the evil emperor said was naturally not a good thing. If the Lord of Hell was a kind person, he wouldn't have been imprisoned by the Avicii emperor back then. Moreover, the Lord of Hell had been imprisoned by the Avicii emperor for so many years. He had been enduring the pain of the Avicii emperor all the time. One could imagine the hatred and resentment that had accumulated in his heart. The evil emperor couldn't do anything about this. Even if she took action, she wouldn't be able to completely kill the Lord of Hell. The Lord of Hell would be reborn as the Lord of Hell, and the hatred in his heart would be even deeper and heavier. Of course, whether it's Fengdu or the Lord of Hell, they would still need some time to recover their emperor cultivation after being reborn. It's still very difficult for Fengdu to become a great emperor. But to the Lord of Hell, becoming a great emperor is just a matter of time. His Taoist seal is an infernal court. The 9 heavens had been destroyed, and the Devil Master Brahma Ghost Mother had ascended. The evil emperor wouldn't stay in the middle world. Dai Yu had perished, and Wu Dao's original body was being pursued by the Great Tribulation. He had lost his senses and it was most likely that he had perished. Once the Lord of Hell became a great emperor in the path of hell, no one would be able to go against him from the heavens to the underworld. Thinking of this, Su Zimo realized that although the heavenly court had been destroyed, the greater danger to the middle world was still to come. Once Fengdu and the Lord of Hell made a comeback, the middle world would most likely become a limitless purgatory. Su Zimo muttered softly, in other words, within this period of time, someone has to become a great emperor in the middle world. Only then can we fight against them. This is another variable. The evil emperor said, that blood butterfly has perished and the Dao seal has dissipated. Any imperial emperor in the middle world would have a chance to become a great emperor. Hearing this, Su Zimo suddenly thought of another person. This person had never appeared in the entire War of the Heavens. In addition, the War of the Heavens was too tragic, and both of his true bodies were facing immense pressure. He had almost forgotten about this person. Until now, when he heard the evil emperor's words, he was suddenly awakened. The Patriarch of the Academy. When Wu Dao's original body was still around, the Patriarch of the Academy was not even worth mentioning. To him he was not even a threat. As long as Wu Dao's original body was around, the Patriarch of the Academy would not dare to appear. All these years, the Patriarch of the Academy had only appeared once in great danger. After that, he disappeared again and went into hiding. But now the situation was different. Wu Dao's original body had fallen into the river Styx, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Dai Yu had perished. The people who could really threaten the Patriarch of the Academy were no longer around. At the same time, Su Zimo suddenly remembered that the Lord of the Underworld had once said that the Patriarch of the Academy wanted to cooperate with him. This cooperation even moved the Lord of the Underworld, and he was looking forward to it. He even let the Patriarch of the Academy go. Su Zimo had already vaguely guessed what the Patriarch of the Academy was going to do. In the middle world, Dai Yu's Dao seal had dissipated. Now that the heavenly court was no longer obstructing them, the vitality of heaven and earth was rich. After the War of the Heavens, countless treasures were left in the heavenly court, and endless opportunities were nurtured. The treasures and opportunities accumulated over several eras, witnessing the War of the Heavens, the battle between great emperors, the collision of various Dao techniques, these were all incomparably precious experiences. All these karma intertwined together, and it was very likely that it would lead to the birth of the next great emperor in the middle world. Perhaps it would not take long. Chapter 3204. Any emperor in the middle world had the possibility of becoming a great emperor. Of course, this included the Academy Patriarch. Previously, when the Academy Patriarch suddenly appeared and took over the witch race, Su Zimo speculated that the Academy Patriarch had most likely reached the great success of the Emperor realm, or even the great perfection of the Emperor realm. Even if the Academy Patriarch was only at the great success of the Emperor realm at that time, after the destruction of the heavenly court and the endless heaven and earth essence Qi turned into rain and covered the 3,000 domains, the Academy Patriarch would definitely be able to break through and reach the great perfection of the Emperor realm. Su Zimo had not yet stepped into the Emperor realm. In this regard he was one step behind. It was not that his talent was not strong enough or that he did not have enough opportunities. In fact, his cultivation speed had far exceeded that of his peers. It was just that in the chaotic situation after the War of the Heavens, there were many variables that made time extremely unfavorable for him. Fortunately, whether it was the Lord of the Underworld or the Lord of Hell, it would take some time for them to come back to life and recover to their peak state. Even if the heavenly court was destroyed and endless karma and opportunities descended on the middle world, it would not be easy to become a great emperor. As long as he stepped into the great perfection of the Emperor realm as soon as possible, with the help of the 3 pure jade book and the rich heaven and earth essence Qi around the middle world, he could quickly raise his cultivation level and reach the great perfection of the Emperor realm. At that time, it was still unknown who would become the great emperor of the middle world. Of course, as the evil emperor said, this was an unpredictable variable. That dreamlike token, you have to keep it well. Just as Su Zimo was deep in thought, the evil emperor suddenly opened his mouth and said something. Su Zimo subconsciously looked over. At this moment, the evil emperor's eyes seemed to contain some kind of deep meaning. Su Zimo was slightly startled and did not understand for a moment. The dreamlike token that had been emitting warmth during the War of the Heavens had gradually cooled down at this time. Su Zimo was puzzled, and just as he was about to ask, the evil emperor said lightly, "I have to go. See you in the vast 1,000 domains." The evil emperor waved her hand, and the countless beast armies that were lingering in the middle world and the celestial court returned to the abyss under her command, returning to the beast world. After the War of the Heavens, when the Devil Lord and the Brahma Ghost Mother ascended to the greater thousand realms, the Ghost Tribe Army and Ashura Army retreated from the middle world and returned to the Ghost World and Ashura Realm. The Demon Lord and Brahma Ghost Mother had ascended to the Great Thousand Worlds. Even though Great Monarch Araki Takashi and Great Monarch Shuedai had perished, the evil monarch was still alive. They did not dare to be impudent in front of the evil emperor. Before the evil emperor ascended to the Greater Thousand World, he still had to make a trip to the Netherworld. Her gaze turned and landed on the many bronze fragments floating in the starry sky. It was the shattered hell-suppressing cauldron, stained with Wu Dao's blood. The evil emperor pondered for a moment, then reached out his sleeve and rolled up the fragments of the prison-suppressing cauldron that were stained with Wu Dao's blood. Seeing this scene, Su Zimo seemed to have sensed something and could not help but ask, "That Wu Dao's true body is not dead?" As long as Wu Dao's true body was not dead, the middle world would not be in any great danger. "I don't know." The evil emperor shook his head. After a pause, the evil emperor said, "Even if he's not dead, it's no different from being dead. All of his aura has been locked down. If he dares to appear, the calamity will descend again, and it will be even more terrifying than this time. He can't help with the crisis of the middle world." Su Zimo was silent. The evil emperor did not say anything else. His body fell into the starry sky abyss and disappeared from the middle world. The large battlefield in the middle world had almost stopped. The heavenly court's emperors saw that the situation was not good and had already ascended. As for the other living beings in the heavenly court, such as the true spirits and the immortal King Fist, they were left behind in the middle world and became the target of public criticism. This was especially so for the evil spirits from the 9 great sins. They already hated the heavenly court's experts to the bone. This kind of hatred was engraved in their bones for generations. The heavenly court and the heavenly court's momentum was gone. They could not resist the encirclement of the many worlds and the 9 great sins. Countless heavenly court living beings fled in all directions. These living beings from the heavenly court and the heavenly court had been high and mighty for many eras. They did not see the races of the middle world as humans. If there was even the slightest disobedience, they would kill and even kill all of them. Over the years, countless worlds had been destroyed by the heavenly court and the heavenly court. Countless races had their bloodlines completely cut off. And in this life, the heavenly court and the heavenly court finally paid the price. In the netherworld, at the foot of the Holding Calf Mountain, the evil emperor looked at the huge whirlpool that was slowly spinning in the abyss. After a while, she waved her hand. A bright red flower flew over from Acheron and landed in her palm. Although the red spider lily can preserve the memories of the previous life, there are too many variables in reincarnation in the Great Thousand World. "I'm not sure if this flower is useful," the evil emperor muttered to herself as she placed Dai Yu's soul into the red spider lily. The evil emperor's spiritual will moved, and the flower closed, protecting Dai Yu's soul within. She looked at the ancient runes on the 6 regions of the huge whirlpool. She waved her hand gently and sent the red spider lily into one of the regions. The runes on that region corresponded to the heavenly Tao of the 6 paths of reincarnation. After doing that, the evil emperor turned around and went to the Netherworld River through the Netherworld Palace. She headed toward the depths of the Netherworld River, as if she was familiar with everything around her. But when she reached the border between the Netherworld River and the Blood Sea, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. She did not step into the Blood Sea easily. The evil emperor stood there motionlessly as if waiting for something. After a long time, a dilapidated ancient ship broke through the blood mist and slowly sailed over from the depths of the Blood Sea. It stopped in front of the Netherworld River. There was no one on the ancient ship. The evil emperor pondered for a while. Then she waved her sleeves and threw the fragments of the confinement cauldron that were stained with Wu Dao's blood into the ancient ship. That dilapidated ancient ship slowly sailed away, once again disappearing into the blood mist, disappearing without a trace. The evil emperor stood there for a long time and bowed slightly toward the depths of the Blood Sea. Then she left and ascended to the Great Thousand World. In the depths of the Blood Sea, there was a pile of ruins with countless corpses, broken halberds and broken swords. It was blood-stained and dilapidated, like a desolate island. The blood mist surrounded the ruins, but it could not seep into it. Everything in these ruins had an ancient aura, and it was impossible to tell when they were born. That included the black-robed man with disheveled hair sitting in the ruins. The dilapidated ancient ship stopped at the edge of the ruins, and the black-robed man slowly got up. He walked to the edge of the ruins and stepped into the blood sea casually. He grabbed the fragments of the confinement cauldron and threw them beside a weak flame on the ruins. That was Wu Dao's martial soul. After it was reignited, the martial soul's vitality was gradually recovering, even if it was very slow. At this moment, the martial soul's flame seemed to have sensed something, and it burned brighter and brighter. The blood stains on the fragments of the confinement cauldron also glowed with vitality. The fragments of the confinement cauldron, stained with blood, began to draw closer to the martial soul under the guidance of some kind of power. Tsk tisk. The black-robed man made a strange sound and muttered, "Dao techniques are really domineering. To refine the confinement cauldron into one's physical body." Chapter 3205. The War of the Heavens had come to an end, but the fighting in the Middle Worlds had not stopped. Without the protection of Emperor experts, even the Heavenly Court army could not withstand the joint attack of the experts of the various domains. In the eyes of the experts of the 3,000 domains, these Heavenly Court beings were not only the existences who had enslaved them, but also a huge treasure trove on each Heavenly Court being. In the storage bags of these Heavenly Court beings, there were countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures. These were the price that the Heavenly Court beings had to pay. Su Zimo returned to Heaven Wasteland Domain with serious injuries. In this War of the Heavens, Heaven Wasteland Domain was not affected too much by the Emperor experts, and not many beings below the Emperor realm died. But the hearts of the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain were extremely heavy. Too many great emperors had fallen in this battle. Even Emperor Araki Takeshi and Emperor Shuedai had both died. Some old friends of Heaven Wasteland Domain were extremely sad when they saw the death of the human emperor. When they saw Su Zimo return, they sighed silently in their hearts. Su Zimo and immortal King Ling Long had seen their loved ones die with their own eyes. Who could bear such a blow? Lin Lei and Lin Luo accompanied immortal King Ling Long, while Feng Kentian was expressionless, silently guarding by the side. The tiger, Qing Qing, Little Fox, Night Spirit and Golden Lion also came to Su Zimo's side, looking at him worriedly. Yunju and Imo Qing stood not far away, silently watching him. Everyone wanted to say something but they did not know how to comfort him. "I'm fine." As if feeling everyone's worry for him, Su Zimo smiled softly. Ever since he had started cultivating, he had seen far too many parting of life and death. He had also experienced it himself. But it was different from the past. Whether it was Big Brother Su Hong or Yao Shui, after they died there was no trace of them and there was no way to find them. Even though he had cultivated to this level and had even been to the netherworld, there was no way to find them. But Daiyu was different. The evil emperor would help Daiyu reincarnate in the Great Thousand World and obtain a new life. Although Su Zimo was sad right now, there was more anticipation in his heart. He looked forward to the day when the two of them could meet again in the Great Thousand World. Even if Daiyu was just an ordinary mortal, he didn't care. He would stay by Daiyu's side to protect her. Perhaps he would choose to bring Daiyu into cultivation just like what he did in Pingyang Town back then. Of course, ascending to the great wide world was not just to find Daiyu. He still wanted revenge. It was not just for Daiyu and the human emperor, but also for the many living beings who had died in the War of the Heavens in this era. It was also for the predecessors who had advanced courageously over the past few epochs. Su Zimo wanted to know why the Heavenly Court existed. What exactly is the status and identity of the 9 masters of the Heavenly Courts in the Great Thousand Worlds? Who were the Devil Lord, the Evil Monarch, the Brahma Ghost Mother, and the others? What exactly happened in the Great Thousand World back then? Why would the existence of Wu Dao's original body lead to the great calamity of the Great Thousand World? The root of everything was in the Great Thousand World. All of these questions could only be answered by ascending to the Great Thousand World. Of course, before ascending to the Great Thousand World, he had to solve another crisis. If he guessed correctly, the conspiracy of the Patriarch of the Academy and the Master of the Netherworld was a huge disaster to the Middle World and all living beings. And on top of this disaster, there was now the Master of Hell who was about to make a comeback. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed since the War of the Heavens. Over the years, most of the living beings in the Heavenly Courts had been encircled and annihilated. The war in the 3,000 worlds had gradually subsided, and the living beings of the various races were recuperating. The cultivation environment of the Middle World was far better than before, and the various races ushered in an unprecedented era of glory. The resources and treasures of the former Middle World that had lasted for several eras had been seized by the Heavenly Courts. The Heavenly Courts were broken and countless seeds were scattered. The once extinct immortal herbs and spirit plants grew anew in various parts of the 3,000 worlds. In the vast starry sky, there were countless treasures hidden, and countless opportunities were nurtured. It should be known that even for people with extraordinary talent, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to break through the barrier of cultivation level without opportunities. After the heavenly courts were broken, it gave these geniuses the best cultivation environment. After the War of the Heavens, all living beings had a clear feeling that everyone's cultivation speed was obviously much faster. Breaking through to the next realm was also easier than before. In just 100 years, there were more than a dozen quasi-emperor experts in the 3,000 worlds who had been stuck for hundreds of thousands of years who had broken through and stepped into the emperor realm. Before this, it was simply unimaginable. Without the heavenly court's blockade, as long as one stepped into the emperor realm, he could choose to ascend to the great thousand worlds at any time. In the past 100 years, there had been many emperor realm experts who had chosen to ascend to the great thousand worlds one after another. Emperor realm experts needed to absorb Genesis Chi to cultivate and strengthen and perfect the world. And the Genesis Chi in the middle world was very little. Only in the great thousand worlds could emperor realm experts cultivate better and faster, and improve further. Moreover, experts who had cultivated to the emperor realm all had strong Tao hearts and great ambitions. They all wanted to go to a wider world to see and explore. Before many emperor realm experts ascended, they would choose to come to the heaven wasteland domain to visit Suzimo and say goodbye to him. Everyone knew that Suzimo was Araki Takashi. And the reason why they had the chance to ascend to the great thousand worlds was also because of the battle and sacrifice of Emperor Araki Takashi and Emperor Shuedai. The scene of Emperor Araki Takashi preaching Tao to the common people had a huge impact on their hearts. That kind of shock was still unforgettable. Wu Dao's method had benefited countless living beings in the world. Although the current Araki Takashi was only a peak immortal king, the Emperor Realm experts still had great respect for him. Emperor North Kuan and Emperor South Peng left and ascended to the Great Thousand Worlds. The Lord of the Flower Domain also chose to ascend to the Great Thousand Worlds. One after another, the Emperor Realm experts who had fought in the War of the Heavens left one after another. The many surviving Emperor Realm experts of the Sword World also ascended to the Great Thousand Worlds. The old man with the iron crown seemed to have a premonition and did not leave. In the current Heaven Wasteland Domain, there were not many Emperor Realm experts. Almost all of them came from the Rakshasa race in the Nine Serenities Sinful Grounds, and there were no peak Emperor Realm experts. But because of the War of the Heavens and Araki Takashi's preaching, the Heaven Wasteland Domain had an unshakable position in the 3,000 worlds. Even the Light World, Sky Eye World, and other super worlds that had a grudge with the Heaven Wasteland Domain did not dare to find trouble with the Heaven Wasteland Domain. Back then, in the later stages of the War of the Heavens, many Emperor Realm experts of the 3,000 worlds were influenced and stepped forward to fight against the Heavenly Court. The scene was too shocking for them. Who could guarantee that if they found trouble with the Heaven Wasteland Domain now, the experts of these worlds would not stand up again? Chapter 3206. During the War of the Heavens, Suzimo's 5 Grotto Heavens were nourished and had just broken through to the peak of the Grotto Heaven realm. Over the past 100 years, his cultivation had also improved greatly, but it was impossible for him to break through again. Although the combat power of the 5 Grotto Heavens was terrifying and invincible among those of the same level, it was several times more difficult to transform all 5 Grotto Heavens and become a quasi-emperor. One day, 100 years later, Suzimo suddenly left Heaven Wasteland Domain without saying goodbye. No one knew where he went. Everyone in Heaven Wasteland Domain noticed this and were a little worried. Over the years, Suzimo did not seem abnormal when he was with everyone. He talked and laughed and did not seem to be affected much. However, everyone in Heaven Wasteland Domain knew that Suzimo was not in a good state. Whenever he was alone, Suzimo would often sit in a daze, not talking or cultivating, looking disappointed. Will something happen to him in this state? Mo Qing frowned slightly, a trace of worry in her beautiful eyes. Suzimo's sudden departure caused some old friends of Heaven Wasteland Domain and a few experts who were temporarily in charge of Heaven Wasteland Domain to gather together to discuss this matter. There shouldn't be any danger. Feng Cantian shook his head and said, "In the War of the Heavens, there are not many people in this world who can hurt him. To be precise, other than great emperors and peak imperial emperors, there was nothing to be afraid of. Even if Suzimo faced a peerless imperial emperor, he still had the power to fight." Lin Xuanji said, "It's good to let him go out alone. Maybe he can relieve the pain in his heart." He left without saying goodbye and left alone. "I'm afraid it's not just to relieve some pain. Elder Xian suddenly said, he might want to use himself as bait to lure someone out. Everyone looked at each other and thought of this person almost at the same time. Could he have already ascended to the vast thousand domains? Yang Ruoxu asked. No. Elder Xian shook his head and said. With certainty, he's very ambitious. He won't ascend to the greater world so quietly. Among everyone present, Elder Xian understood the patriarch of the academy the most. Yunju frowned and said, based on the current information, the patriarch of the academy is likely to have reached the perfected imperial realm. If he finds Zimo might be in danger. There's definitely danger. Elder Xian said, but with Zimo's methods, the academy patriarch should not be able to kill him. After all, during the War of the Heavens, Su Zimo had single-handedly held back 50 peak imperial emperors, including a top-notch expert like young Master Shen Tian. Lin Xuanji said, but even if you can lure the patriarch of the academy out, you won't be able to kill him. Don't forget about Iron Crown Sword Emperor. Elder Xian said. At the mention of this person, everyone's eyes lit up. Although the Iron Crown Sword Emperor's cultivation level did not increase, after the baptism of the War of the Heavens, his combat strength had increased by another level. It could be said that the Iron Crown Sword Monarch was one of the cultivators with the highest chance of becoming a great emperor after the Blood Butterfly Monarch. Elder Xian said, the Iron Crown Sword Emperor did not ascend to the vast thousand domains because of the patriarch of the academy. For the sake of that stupid patriarch, why did he have to be so secretive? Why did he hide it from us? Tiger complained. Immortal King Ling Long said indifferently, the more people who know about this, the more the heavenly secrets will be revealed. He naturally won't appear when he senses danger. Over the years, Immortal King Ling Long had also lost a lot of weight. Is there a need to take the patriarch of the academy so seriously? Lin Xuanji did not think so. He only knew a little about the patriarch of the academy from the mouths of others. It seemed that he only had a strong deduction ability and was very smart, but there was nothing else. Hearing this, Elder Xian glanced at Lin Xuanji and said, over the years, the opponents who looked down on him are all dead. Elder Xian and the patriarch of the academy had known each other for many years, but they had all been schemed against and almost lost their lives. It was only because of the establishment of the Heaven Wasteland domain, the reappearance of the immortal realm, and the breaking of the seal of the 9 heavens, that he was able to survive. Putting everything else aside, just his tolerance alone is already better than many people, Elder Xian said. Elder Xian said, there are many ambitious people, but there are also many who can endure silently. However, there are very few people like him who are ambitious and can endure silently. Tolerance? What kind of ability is that? Lin Xuanji pursed his lips. Do you think it's easy to tolerate? Elder Xian said, if a person can tolerate to the extreme, it means that this person is extremely rational and calm. He can restrain his desires, suppress his anger, and even cast aside all emotions and desires. He will not be disturbed by them and will be able to make the most powerful judgment for himself. Ask yourself, can you do it? Lin Xuanji fell silent. Behind tolerance, one had to restrain one's desires, suppress one's anger, and cut off all emotions and desires. Not to mention that he could not do it, there was probably no one else in the world who could do it apart from the patriarch of the academy. Elder Xian said, he won't do anything unless he's more than 90% confident. In the War of the Heavens, Araki Takashi and the Shuedai twin emperors died. The Sword World, Heaven Wasteland Domain, and Great Wasteland Domain were all severely injured. Zimo was severely injured, but he did not appear even under such circumstances. At that time the evil emperor was still around. If the patriarch of the academy acted rashly, he might have been killed. Tiger could not help but say, that bullsh *T patriarch is too good at hiding. Didn't he fail twice even though he's so powerful? Lin Xuanji raised his brows and asked. Elder Xian shook his head. To be precise, those 2 times can't be considered as failures. The first time he attacked Zimo, he was indeed flawless and treated everyone as pawns. However, he failed because of the appearance of the Emperor's tomb. Behind the Emperor's tomb is the master of the underworld. It's reasonable that he couldn't divine it. Moreover, he didn't fail completely that time. At least he obtained the complete Forbidden Secret Manual, the 3 Pure Jade booklet. He used it to break through the barrier and enter the Emperor realm. His cultivation improved tremendously. At this point, Elder Xian looked at everyone and said, everyone thought that he wanted the creation of Qinglian. However, he only wanted an opportunity. The creation of Qinglian was that opportunity. In the end, although he did not obtain the green lotus of good fortune, with the 3 pure ones jade booklet in hand, this opportunity was considered to have been obtained. After pausing for a while, Elder Xian continued, the second failure was because of the existence of Wu Dao's real body. That existence even attracted the heavenly punishment of the greater world. It was beyond the common sense of the heavenly Tao. It was not affected by karma and was not involved in the mysteries of the heavens. Naturally, he could not divine it. Even so, he still escaped. Hearing this, everyone gradually realized how difficult it was to deal with the patriarch of the academy. Everyone had seen how terrifying Wu Dao's real body was with their own eyes. There were not many people in the world who could escape from the hands of Wu Dao's real body. Although the patriarch of the academy had failed, he had survived from the hands of Wu Dao's real body. This could be considered the greatest success. Now Wu Dao's real body had died, but the patriarch of the academy was still alive. It was hard to say who would win in the battle between the two of them. He was able to endure and was quite bold. When Wu Dao's real body was still around, he still dared to take the risk and appear to take over the witch world. Then he went into hiding again. Behind this was the ability to see through the mysteries of the heavens and make accurate calculations. Elder Xian sighed faintly and said, if the patriarch of the academy is willing to take action now and chase after Zimo, this situation is still considered good. Although a peak imperial emperor is strong, he is not invincible. I'm worried about another situation. Chapter 3207. What are you worried about? Lin Xuanji asked subconsciously. Elder Xian remained silent. The bystanders looked at each other and were also somewhat puzzled. Although Desolate Marshal and Shuedai emperors were dead, given the strength of the Heaven Wasteland Domain, Great Wasteland Domain, Sword Realm, and Blood Ape Realm, no matter how strong the sect master of the academy was, they could still fight him if they joined forces. Only Immortal King Ling Long said slowly, proving his Tao as a great emperor. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. Impossible. Lin Xuanji jumped up and frowned. Proving one's Tao as a great emperor is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. There have only been a few people since ancient times. At this point, Lin Xuanji couldn't continue. He realized that this era was different from the previous eras. In this era, the heavenly court was broken and the middle world was no longer sealed by the 9 heavens. The cultivation environment of the middle world was completely different, comparable to when the middle world was first born. Moreover, there were countless treasures and opportunities accumulated by the heavenly court over the previous eras. It wouldn't be surprising if someone else proved their Tao as a great emperor. I don't think so. Yun Ting frowned. The Academy's Patriarch's cultivation has stagnated at the Grotto Heaven realm for at least 100,000 years. His talent isn't top-notch. Does he have a chance to prove his Tao as a great emperor? Yun Ting had a say in terms of cultivation talent. Other than Su Zimo, there weren't many people who could surpass him in terms of cultivation speed. There's only one great emperor in the middle world. Any emperor has a chance, including him, Elder Xian said. Also, your understanding of cultivation talent is a little one-sided. Cultivation speed is only one way to show one's cultivation talent. It's not everything. The Shuedai Empress was unknown before she reached the Grotto Heaven realm. She only had 5 heavenly tribulations. Ordinary people would think that her talent was at the bottom of the valley. But what happened later? Everyone knew that the blood butterfly had become a legend. Elder Xian said, actually, no matter how talented a person is, if they don't have any opportunities and only rely on closed-door cultivation, their achievements will be limited. She was cautious and didn't obtain any opportunities in those years. That's why her cultivation didn't improve much. Yun Ting was silent. In truth, in the cultivation environment of the dimensional realm, it was normal for the king realm to stagnate for 100,000 years or even hundreds of thousands of years. Even if it was him, without any fortuitous encounters, it was impossible for his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds just by cultivating in seclusion. Back then, at the Divine Firmament Immortal Gathering, he had lost to Su Zimo and resolutely chose to leave the Heaven Realm. In fact, it was because he had realized where his bottleneck was. Heading to the Sword World was also to search for greater opportunities. Actually, the Patriarch of the Academy is extremely powerful among those of the same level. At least I am far from being his match. I have seen it when I received the inheritance of Shen Envy of the 9th heaven. Immortal King Ling Long said, but for hundreds of thousands of years, the Patriarch of the Academy has rarely made a move. His presence is very low. Even in the Heaven Realm, not many experts pay attention to him. Apart from Elder Xian, Only immortal King Ling Long had witnessed the true strength of the patriarch of the academy. Immortal King Ling Long said, "He's ambitious, skilled in politics and observant of human nature. However, he keeps a low profile, forbearance and restrains his sharpness. It's even to the extent that all of you would unconsciously look down on him. And when all of you look down on him, you will be careless, relaxed and pay the price. This is also where he's smart." Even young Ruoxu, who came from the Heaven and Earth Academy, broke out in cold sweat when he heard this. He had cultivated in the academy for many years, but only now did he realize that he knew nothing about this patriarch of the academy. Feng Cantian sighed and said, "Sometimes, one has to admit that in the cruel and dark chaotic world, people like the patriarch of the academy will often become the final winner. This group of people cared about too many things in their hearts. They also had their own beliefs and people they cared about. As for the patriarch of the academy, he didn't care about anything except himself." In this era, the heavenly court had been shattered, and an unprecedented situation had appeared. The patriarch of the academy's patience had indeed reaped unimaginable rewards. The right time, opportunity and luck were all on his side. If he could take another step forward and become an emperor, he would really become the final winner that Feng Cantian spoke of. Su Zimo also saw this point, which was why he used himself as bait to lure the patriarch of the academy out in advance. The domain lord is also worried about another thing. Sitting at the side, Princess Yufei, who had been quiet all this time, suddenly spoke. After the War of the Heavens, the army of hell had split into two. Some stayed in Heaven Wasteland domain and continued to listen to Su Zimo's orders. Princess Yufei was one of them. And more of the creatures of hell seemed to have sensed something and returned to hell domain. Princess Yufei said, "The Avicii Great Hell has been shattered, and the Lord of Hell has been reborn in the hell domain. I'm afraid that this will be detrimental to the middle world in the future." The evil emperor had only mentioned this to Su Zimo, and others didn't know about it. Hearing this, everyone's heart trembled and their expressions changed greatly. The Lord of Hell had been reborn. Lin Lei asked, "Those lords of the heavenly court have already died, and his greatest enemy, the Emperor of Infinity, has also died. Why does he still want to deal with the middle world?" Feng Cantian said, "Although the Emperor of Infinity has died, his successor is still alive." Su Zimo's two true bodies had the Prajna Nirvana Sutra, and the prison-suppressing cauldron. He had also once controlled the Avicii Great Hell, and could be considered to have received the complete inheritance of the Emperor of Infinity. The Yasha King of Fear said, "The Lord of Hell has a savage nature and is extremely bloodthirsty. After being imprisoned by the Emperor of Infinity for so long, he had to endure the pain of infinity at all times. Now that he has been reborn, he will definitely take revenge and be even more savage." Even if it was an ordinary person, after being imprisoned for so many years, their temperament would have changed greatly. Moreover, the Lord of Hell was originally a savage and bloodthirsty person. It was not surprising that he would vent his anger on the creatures of the middle world. Sigh. Elder Shen looked worried and sighed. The Lord of Hell was an expert at the level of a great emperor. Once he returned, no one in the middle world would be able to defeat him. The Yasha King of Fear said, "There's also the Lord of Hell. He might not be dead." Everyone was shocked again. The Lord of Hell, who wanted to bury the heavens and refine all creatures, was not dead. Although it was much easier for the creatures of the middle world to cultivate, their overall strength was not as strong as it was 100 years ago. This was because most of the emperors in this generation had chosen to ascend to the greater world. There were not many emperors left. As long as the Lord of Hell and the Lord of Hell were still alive, the middle world would not be able to withstand it, let alone these two terrifying existences. The Yasha King of Fear said, "I suggest that you all ascend to the greater world as soon as possible after becoming emperors. This might be the only way for us to survive." Everyone in Tianhuang shook their heads when they heard this. They knew that the middle world was likely to face a huge disaster. Why would they abandon everything and turn a blind eye to the calamity of the creatures behind them and choose to ascend to the greater world? Those who could gather in this hall all had something they wanted to protect. The Yasha King of Fear did not try to persuade them anymore. After interacting with them over the years, he had already understood this group of people around him. And these people were also gradually changing him. Perhaps he would not leave. Chapter 3208. Time passed and the sun and moon changed. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed since the War of the Heavens. The heavenly court was shattered, opportunities were everywhere, and Yuan Qi was rich. After the era of the two emperors, The Middle Worlds ushered in an unprecedented era full of vitality. It had only been 1,000 years, but the 3,000 realms had already experienced a drastic change, with each passing day and the moon changing. Wu Dao had been passed down. All living beings born in the past 1,000 years would attempt to cultivate martial arts. Naturally, they would be able to sense the spirit contained within martial arts. The beings of the 10,000 races who had witnessed and experienced the War of the Heavens felt this spirit even more strongly. Although Great Emperor Araki Takashi had died, the fire seed of Wu Dao's spirit had been planted. The spirits of the 10,000 races who had been suppressed and enslaved for several eras were obviously gradually recovering. Even the old man with the iron crown could feel that not only the sword domain, Heaven Wasteland domain, and other domains who had participated in the War of the Heavens, but also the other domains, there were more and more hot-blooded and heroic men emerging. The Middle Worlds were becoming better and better. On this day, the old man with the iron crown returned to Heaven Wasteland domain. Immortal King Ling Long, Feng Cantian, and the others appeared. Over the years, the old man with the iron crown had been secretly following Su Zimo around, waiting for the Academy Patriarch to appear. Now that the old man with the iron crown had suddenly returned, no one knew what the outcome of this matter was. He never appeared, right? Elder Xian asked. The old man with the iron crown nodded with a solemn expression. As long as the Academy Patriarch was not eliminated, he would always be a hidden danger. Senior, why are you back? The little fox asked with a worried expression. Su Zimo was alone. Without the protection of the old man with the iron crown, he might still encounter danger. Zimo asked me to come back and take the last step. The old man with the iron crown said. He probably guessed that the Academy Patriarch would not appear. If we want to solve this hidden danger, there is another way, which is to prove our Tao before him. If the old man with the iron crown could prove his Tao before the Patriarch, the Academy Patriarch would not be a threat. Given the character of the Patriarch of the Academy, he might not even show up and directly ascend to the vast thousand world. The reason why the Patriarch of the Academy did not appear previously might be because he deduced that you were protecting Zimo and was wary of him. Feng Cantian muttered, now that you have left, the Patriarch of the Academy might take action. The old man with the iron crown smiled faintly and said, if he dares to show himself, that place is the best. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They all understood the meaning behind the old man's words. Zimo had a breakthrough? Feng Cantian quickly asked. The elder with the iron crown nodded and said, he has already become a quasi-emperor. So fast. Feng Cantian was speechless. One had to know that 1,000 years ago, just like Su Zimo, he had just ascended to the perfected Grotto Heaven stage. Even though the heavenly court had been destroyed, the surrounding heaven-earth essence chi was much denser than before. Even so, it was still extremely difficult to make any progress in the past 1,000 years. Even with his talent, he had yet to become a quasi-emperor. On the other hand, Su Zimo had cultivated 5 Grotto Heavens and required far more heaven-earth essence chi than him. Who would have thought that Su Zimo would become a quasi-emperor before him? Feng Cantian nodded slightly and felt gratified. He said, if that's the case, Zimo must have obtained many fortuitous encounters in the outside world. Fortuitous encounters. At the mention of this, the old man with the iron crown hesitated for a moment and said, it can't be considered fortuitous encounters. His condition is a little strange. Even I can't see through it. Sometimes he just sits there quietly in a daze. I don't know what he is thinking about. But not long after, his body will emit an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation. Even I feel a little shocked by this energy. Everyone looked at each other in shock. What kind of energy could make the old man with the iron crown feel shocked? He might be comprehending some kind of forbidden technique. The old man with the iron crown pondered and said, however, his cultivation realm is not high enough and he can't unleash the true forbidden technique. Normally, one would need to reach the Emperor realm to have the chance to comprehend forbidden techniques. However, Su Zimo's situation was very different from others. Others had only witnessed or experienced the War of the Heavens. Imperial Emperor experts like the old man with the iron crown had at most fought with the Heavenly Court's Imperial Emperors. However, Wu Dao's original body had fought against the various Heavenly Court's masters in the War of the Heavens back then. The two true bodies were mentally connected. Even though Su Zimo had already lost the perception of Wu Dao's original body, the situation of the battle back then was already reflected in his mind. This was a battle between the top experts. This was a battle between great emperors. Although he was only a peak king, he had the experience of fighting against various great emperors. This kind of experience was the most precious experience and also the greatest fortuitous encounter. The dazzling Dao techniques were contained in the battle between Wu Dao's original body and the various heavenly quartz masters. Recalling that battle, Su Zimo also tried to comprehend the Dao and Dao techniques that appeared in that battle. This kind of memory was not something that he witnessed, but something that he personally experienced. No one was closer than him and felt the impact and baptism of those powerful Dao techniques more deeply than him. The old man with the iron crown continued, "After he became a quasi-emperor, I was still a little worried. After all, there is a huge difference between a quasi-emperor and a great emperor. However, later on, when I wanted to continue following him, I could no longer find any traces of him." Hearing this, everyone was relieved. Even the old man with the iron crown had lost track of him. In this world, apart from the great emperors, there was probably no one who could threaten Su Zimo. Feng Cantian said in a low voice, "After all, Zimo is the only 12th grade creation in the world, Qinglian. He has also cultivated 5 unprecedented grotto heavens. With his current cultivation, if he can step into the great emperor realm, he might be able to fight against a great emperor. It's too difficult." The old man with the iron crown shook his head. After all, a great emperor had risen to another level. Even if the old man with the iron crown knew that his combat strength was far greater than 1,000 years ago, he still had no chance of winning against a great emperor. Moreover, Su Zimo had just stepped into the great emperor realm. Since ancient times, only great emperor Araki Takashi had been able to fight against a true great emperor at the initial stage of the great emperor realm. Moreover, Su Zimo had cultivated 5 grotto heavens. If he wanted to step into the great emperor realm, there was a bottleneck that was difficult to break through. Zimo can support 5 grotto heavens, but he can't support 5 worlds. This is too taxing on his primordial spirit. Not to mention him, even I can't bear it. Only by fusing 5 grotto heavens into one can he evolve a world and step into the great emperor realm. The old man with the iron crown said, "However, the 5 grotto heavens nurture 5 different Dao techniques. It's almost impossible to fuse these Dao techniques into one world. Not to mention fusing 5 grotto heavens with the grotto heavens that Su Zimo had cultivated, fusing 2 grotto heavens would probably cause them to explode and collapse immediately." Immortal King Ling Long said, "Qinglian originated from the Great Thousand Worlds. This might be the key to his breakthrough." Chapter 3209. In the depths of the underworld river, in a corner of the ruins at the center of the Blood Sea, Wu Dao's original body lay on a pile of broken battle armor corpses, staring at the gray sky above his head, motionless. It took him 1,000 years to completely reconstruct his body, restore his vitality and wake up. The injuries this time were too serious. He even thought that he had died. The last memory of Wu Dao's original body was that he escaped into the Blood Sea. After his consciousness sank into darkness, he seemed to see a cluster of fire, which made his soul feel a trace of warmth. It was only a few days ago that he gradually woke up. After the reconstruction, his body and bloodline were clearly different from before. Wu Dao's original body sensed that he had integrated the prison-suppressing cauldron into his bloodline. The prison-suppressing cauldron was not only an emperor divine weapon, but also contained the blood and souls of the 4 great sacred beasts. It was of great help to his body, bloodline, and soul recovery. It was just that the Great Tribulation was too terrifying. His martial universe and Yuanwu world had been reduced to dust. It would most likely take a long time for him to recover. What made him feel both gratified and surprised was that there was extremely rich Genesis Qi in the surroundings of the ruins. Normally speaking, only the Great Thousand Domains could produce Genesis Qi. How could there be such rich Genesis Qi in the ruins? Or was there some connection between the ruins and the Great Thousand Domains? So far his body was still extremely weak and he had almost no strength. It was extremely difficult for him to turn over and sit up. Wu Dao's original body was not in a hurry. Since he had already woken up and there was such rich Genesis Qi around him, he would definitely be able to recover and even go further. He swept his gaze around, and it fell on the black-robed man sitting at the edge of the Blood Sea not far away. If nothing unexpected happened, it should be this black-robed man's doing that he was able to survive and be brought here. Wu Dao's original body was not surprised that there was someone in the depths of the Blood Sea. He had thought of this before falling into the Blood Sea and losing consciousness. The first time he crossed the underworld river, he had seen a dilapidated ancient ship next to the cluster of fire. And the second time he was chased by the heavenly tribulation of the Great Thousand Domains, when he arrived above the Blood Sea, the dilapidated ancient ship next to the cluster of fire had disappeared. The entire sea of blood was deathly still, without a single ripple. If there was no one around, the dilapidated ancient ship wouldn't have moved. Not long after he woke up, Wu Dao's original body had asked about the black-robed man's identity. However, the black-robed man didn't respond. He just sat beside the blood sea as if he didn't want to pay attention to him, as if he didn't hear anything. Wu Dao asked several times but received no response. Thus, Wu Dao's main body didn't insist any further. Even if the black-robed man didn't say anything, he could probably guess something. The Nether River was connected to the Netherworld and the four paths of hell, and the center of the Nether River was surrounded by a sea of blood. In the depths of the Blood Sea there was another ruin. The black-robed man in the ruins was very likely related to the Devil Master, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother. The black-robed man might be the master of the heavenly Tao or the human Tao, or he might have other identities. However, Wu Dao's original body was puzzled as to why this black-robed man had never appeared in the War of the Heavens for several eras. Neither the Devil Master nor the Evil Emperor mentioned this person. Just a drop of blood in the Blood Sea could create a weapon like the Netherworld Treasure Mirror, which helped him withstand the impact of a heavenly tribulation. How did the surrounding sea of blood form? Where did this pile of corpses and broken halberds come from? The strength of this black-robed man was unfathomable. He was probably not inferior to the Devil Master and the Evil Emperor. 1,000 years ago, the barrier between the three realms shattered. Why didn't this black-robed man leave and go to the greater Thousand World? Why did he save him? All kinds of doubts lingered in the heart of Wu Dao's original body. As he thought, he waited patiently, absorbing the vitality around him, slowly healing his body, resting and waiting for his recovery. The Infernal Court. The original Infernal Court was dilapidated and incomplete, causing the creatures of Infernal Court to be unable to break through to the Emperor realm. However, 1,000 years ago the Lord of Hell returned, and the Infernal Court began to rapidly repair. Now it had recovered to its original state. The strength of the Infernal Court was unprecedentedly powerful. On this day, a dark shadow descended in the sky above the Infernal Court. Many of the Infernal Court's imperial emperors did not notice. Only a figure lying in the depths of the 9 springs of hell suddenly opened his eyes and slowly floated out of the water, his figure flickering. In the next moment, this person had already arrived in the sky above the Infernal Court. Fengdu, what's the matter? The Lord of Hell looked at the dark shadow in the sky and raised his eyebrows. Tisuke, your strength recovered very quickly. Fengdu praised. At this time, the Lord of Hell had already stepped into the Emperor realm. Under normal circumstances, even if the Lord of Hell came back from the dead, his cultivation base could not recover so quickly. Because the barrier between the three realms shattered, although the time was very short, it also caused the Lord of Hell's cultivation base to skyrocket, greatly reducing the time it took to recover to the peak. Fengdu said, according to this trend, you will be able to return to the peak in another 1,000 years or so. Almost. The Lord of Hell nodded slightly. He was different from others. For the creatures of the middle world, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to become a great emperor. There were countless barriers in the middle. But for the Lord of Hell, he did not need to cultivate any path. He only needed to recuperate, and his combat power would gradually recover until he reached the upper limit of the middle world and reached the level of a great emperor. This time you chose to be reborn in the Infernal Court. It must be for revenge, right? Fengdu asked. At the mention of this, a hint of gloominess flashed across the Lord of Hell's eyes. He said slowly, Avicii has imprisoned me for so long. I have to give something in return. What are your plans? Fengdu asked. I want to destroy Buddha. Any ancient books related to Buddhism in the middle world will be burned. Any creature that cultivates Buddhism will have to die. At the mention of this, the Lord of Hell's eyes glowed with a bloody light, and his murderous aura was surging. Only crazy revenge and bloody massacre could vent the anger and resentment in his heart all these years. Even in the Great Thousand World, he had never suffered such torment and pain. Everything that had to do with the Emperor of Infinity and the Dharma of Buddhism would vanish from this world. Fengdu was not surprised by the Lord of Hell's madness. He only chuckled and asked, You have been imprisoned for so long. Is it enough to just destroy Buddha? The Lord of Hell looked at him and raised his eyebrows slightly. Fengdu said, Before the War of the Heavens, a cultivator from the middle world came to find me and wanted to work with me. How can an ant from the middle world be worthy of working with you? Would you be interested in him? The Lord of Hell laughed disdainfully. This person's suggestion is very interesting. Fengdu said, At that time, his suggestion was only a slight possibility. There was no hope. However, the outcome of the War of the Heavens 1,000 years ago was beyond everyone's expectations. Not only was the heavenly court destroyed, but the lords of the heavenly court returned to the Great Thousand World. Even the two great emperors, Araki Takashi and Shui Dai, died. All of this was more perfect than what he had predicted. Fengdu's eyes shone brightly. It was obvious that he was extremely excited. What does that person want to do? The Lord of Hell frowned. Work with me to rebuild the heavenly court. Fengdu said word by word. Chapter 32:10. Re-establish the heavenly court? The Lord of Hell smiled faintly and said, "This person doesn't have much foresight. He only wants to rule the middle world." The Lord of Hell was obviously not interested in re-establishing the heavenly court. He chose to be reborn in the infernal world, but it was only a temporary stay. After stirring up a storm of blood in the 3,000 worlds, he would ascend to the greater world. Of course not. Fengdu said, "He will choose to ascend to the greater world, but before that, he will help me re-establish the heavenly court. Moreover, from the moment the heavenly court is re-established, the living beings of the middle world will have to obtain the heavenly court's approval if they want to ascend to the greater world. Moreover, he promised me that after the heavenly court is established, he will not stay in the middle world for too long. He will ascend to the greater world. When that time comes, I will be the new lord of the heavenly court. The underworld and the heavenly court will be under my control. I will become the unprecedented lord of the heavens and earth, who will rule over all races." Fengdu was very excited when he mentioned this. He paused for a while and said, "You know that I can't ascend to the greater world, so what I want to do is to control everything in the middle world." The Lord of Hell said, "Your situation is special. It is difficult for you to prove your Tao. If someone proves their Tao in the middle world and becomes a great emperor, they can overthrow the heavenly court. Your so-called Lord of the Heavens and Earth will not last long." No. Fengdu smiled evilly and said, "After re-establishing the heavenly court, the first thing I want to do is to enslave the living beings of the middle world." The Lord of Hell looked around. Fengdu said slowly, "The heavenly court in the past only sealed the middle world and built a prison to enslave and imprison the bodies of the living beings of the middle world. What I want to do is to use the curse of Yen Sheng to control the emperors of the living beings of the middle world. I want to enslave and control their souls, spirits and even consciousness. Through these emperors, I can control the living beings of the 3,000 worlds." Fengdu was very experienced in this aspect. Back then he used the curse of Yen Sheng to control a small number of emperors. He used both kindness and power to control the Dragon World, Wudong World and many other worlds. Fengdu smiled sinisterly and said, "Enslaving the corporeal bodies of all living beings is only the lowest level method. What I want to do is to enslave everything about them. The thoughts of the living beings of every race will be under my influence. Even if someone has achieved the martial monarch realm, they will still have to obey my orders." Even the Lord of Hell, who was a cruel and bloodthirsty person, felt a chill run down his spine when he heard this. Such methods were even more vicious than the 9 heavens. "There's a problem here." The Lord of Hell suddenly said, "That person proposed this cooperation before the War of the Heavens. In fact, the possibility of success is very low. He didn't know the outcome of this generation's War of the Heavens. He also didn't know that Araki Takashi and Shui Dai would die. He also didn't know that I would return. This also means that if the two of you want to join forces to establish the heavenly court, he will have to prove his Tao and become a grand emperor of a middle world. The possibility of that happening is also very low. He has no confidence at all. The reason he proposed this cooperation with you is most likely because he's using you." The King of Hell pointed out the crux of the matter. Fengdu was not surprised. He chuckled and said, "Of course I know that he's using me. However, even if there's only a glimmer of hope, I'm willing to give him a chance and gamble on him." Therefore, after that meeting, I gave you the heavenly burial scripture and many cultivation resources, as well as treasures of heaven and earth, so that you can help him with his cultivation and cultivation. The Lord of Hell looked at Fengdu with a faint smile and asked, "Didn't you do anything to him and leave a mark on him?" "There's no need for that." Fengdu smiled and said, "This person is very smart. Even if he proves his Tao and becomes a grand emperor, he will still have to be respectful to me. This person is very ambitious. He's decisive and patient. He's ruthless and heartless. If he can ascend to the great thousand world, he won't be a nobody. You should be able to use him." "Oh." The Lord of Hell was surprised and said, "It's not easy to get such an evaluation from you." Fengdu said, This person came to me that day and analyzed many possible scenarios of the War of the Heavens. He's very meticulous and can see through people's hearts. He's good at politics. He's worth using. Why did you come to me this time? The Lord of Hell asked. Fengdu said, since you've been reborn in hell, there's no need for me to wait for him to prove his Tao. After 1,000 years, when you become a Grand Emperor, you can help me rebuild the heavenly court. I don't know how long it'll take for him to achieve his Tao. The sooner the better. If it's too late, I'm afraid there will be other changes. Hey, the Lord of Hell laughed disdainfully and asked, what kind of variables can there be? Araki Takashi and Shuadai are dead. More than half of the imperial emperors in the middle world have ascended. Their strength is greatly reduced. Are you worried that someone will prove his Tao and become a Grand Emperor again? That's only one of the reasons. Fengdu seemed to have thought of something and his face turned gloomy. He said slowly, in fact, Araki Takashi hasn't completely died. He still has a real body in the middle world. Although this real body's realm is not high enough, its potential is not to be underestimated. If he cultivates to the great circle of the Grand Emperor realm, it will be very troublesome. Why? The Lord of Hell raised his eyebrows and asked, can a great circle of the Grand Emperor realm defeat a Grand Emperor? It's highly possible. Fengdu said, Araki Takashi's real body was only at the great circle of the Grotto Heaven realm during the War of the Heavens, but it showed the combat power of a Grand Emperor realm. In addition, his real body is the 12th grade Qinglian. You know the origin of this Qinglian? The Lord of Hell heard this and his expression changed. He asked, the Qinglian of the creation? Yes. Fengdu nodded. The Qinglian of the creation is in his body. The Lord of Hell murmured and then looked at the river Styx. He was deep in thought. Fengdu's eyes flashed and he said, Araki Takashi's real body of the Qinglian has many opportunities. He cultivated 5 Grotto Heavens, which is unprecedented. He also cultivated the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and many other forbidden scriptures. Hearing the words Prajna Nirvana Sutra, the Lord of Hell's murderous aura burst out. He almost lost control. He narrowed his eyes and said, he cultivated the Seamless Sutra? Not only that. Fengdu said, to be precise, he is the only successor of the Seamless Emperor in the 3,000 realms. Not only does he have the Seamless Emperor's cultivation technique, but even the prison-suppressing cauldron is in his hands. However, it was shattered during the War of the Heavens. Araki Takashi, the Qinglian of the creation. The Lord of Hell smirked and a bloody light flashed in the depths of his eyes. He said faintly, go back. 1,000 years later, I will help you establish the heavenly court and become the Lord of the heavens and earth. As for this Araki Takashi, I will end him with my own hands. Anyone who had anything to do with the Seamless Emperor had to die. Chapter 32:11. Time flew by like a shuttle. It had been more than 2,000 years since the War of the Heavens. 2,000 years, to the cultivators of various races, was like a fleeting moment. Ever since the War of the Heavens, the Middle World had fallen into an unprecedented period of peace. There were no major wars or disturbances. In all the major domains, the beings of all races were recuperating. The vitality was rich and opportunities were everywhere in the 3,000 domains. It was a scene of prosperity. The Heaven Domain. Before the War of the Heavens, the 3 corpses of the Lord of the Underworld used the Heaven Domain as a tomb to refine countless beings and experts. The Divine Builder Tree almost withered. Later, the Divine Builder Tree was rescued by the Blood Butterfly Emperor and brought to the Heaven Wasteland Domain. It took root there and was unwilling to leave. After the Heavenly Court was destroyed, there was an even thicker and more magical Divine Builder Tree in the Heavenly Court. After a discussion among the experts of the Heaven Wasteland Domain, it was planted in the Heaven Domain to replace the original Divine Builder Tree. It was considered an explanation to the Heaven Domain. It was also because of this that the Heaven Domain was able to recover quickly. On this day, the monks were travel-worn. They came to the Grand Taiwei Mountain and looked in the direction of the Pure Land. There was a vast and boundless deep sea. In the deep sea they could faintly see a huge abyss. The surrounding seawater surged to that side and automatically bypassed it. The leading old monk had reached the peak of the Grotto Heaven realm. He pointed in the direction of the abyss and said to the young monks behind him, more than 2,000 years ago, there was a Taiwei mountain over there. However, when the War of the Heavens ended, the Taiwei mountain was razed to the ground by a heavenly punishment from the heavens, revealing the abyss of hell. The young monks behind him were young and had not experienced the War of the Heavens. They were full of curiosity about the past. "Master, why is it called the Abyss of Hell? Is it really connected to hell?" A young monk blinked and asked. The old monk smiled and said, "Back then the Taiwei mountain was indeed connected to the Avicii Hell. Legend has it that the deepest part of the Avicii Hell was the Avicii Hell, which could imprison the Lord of the Heavenly Court. It was created by the Avicii Emperor of the Buddhist sect who sacrificed himself and used his flesh and blood." The Avicii Emperor. Although the cultivation levels of these young monks were not high, they had heard of the legends of the great emperors. The era of the two emperors was only about 2,000 years ago, and the stories of Emperor Araki Takashi and Emperor Shuedai were widely spread throughout the 3,000 worlds. Alas! A young monk sighed and said, "I heard that after great Emperor Araki Takashi successfully attacked the heavens, he perished under that heavenly punishment." That's right. Emperor Araki Takashi overthrew the heavenly court that had suppressed this medium-class world for several eras. He didn't die in the hands of the heavenly court's masters, but was killed by a mysterious divine punishment. It's really sigh. The other monk also sighed. A young novice monk seemed to have thought of something. His face was filled with grief and indignation. He clenched his fists and said, "Blood Butterfly Monarch was killed by Mother Ghost, who fought side by side with her. That's the most regrettable thing. Ghost Mother is abominable. She deserves 10,000 deaths." At the mention of this matter, the rest of the monks were indignant. The old monk looked up at the firmaments and could vaguely see the ruins of the heavenly courts through the clouds. He could not help but recall the War of the Heavens 2,000 years ago with a sorrowful expression. Although he did not participate in that earth-shaking battle back then, he was fortunate enough to witness it personally. The unprecedented era of the two emperors had ended just like that. Unknowingly, a faint black mist drifted over from the firmaments, blocking his vision. All of a sudden, a sinister wind blew out of nowhere and the old monk could not help but shudder. "Oh." The old monk frowned slightly. What a dense sinister chi. Even with his cultivation, he could feel a chill from that sinister wind and his hair stood on end. With a grim expression, the old monk soared into the air and looked around. At the same time, he released his spirit consciousness and locked his gaze onto the abyss of hell in the depths of the sea. The abyss of hell was bottomless and nothing had happened for the past 2,000 years. At that moment, the old monk looked down from above at the abyss of hell from afar. He felt as though there were living beings within the abyss that were looking at him as well. A series of sinister auras surged out from the abyss of hell, as though something terrifying was being nurtured within. Something was wrong. The old monk's heart skipped a beat. Although he did not know what was going to happen in the abyss of hell, his instincts from his many years of cultivation told him that a calamity was about to descend. Without time to think, the old monk waved his wide monk robes and swept up the many monks beneath him. He tore through the void and wanted to leave this place. However, the moment the spatial tunnel appeared, it was destroyed by another tremendous power. The old monk's expression changed. Although the power earlier on was sinister and sinister, he could feel a chilling intent surging towards him even though it did not clash head-on. "I heard you guys bad-mouthing the Nirvana Ghost Mother behind her back loud and clear." Kiki. A sinister laughter echoed from the vicinity of the Grand Taiwei Mountain. Apart from the old monk and the monks, there were many cultivators from the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain and Fiend region on the Grand Taiwei Mountain. When they heard that sinister laughter, the cultivators looked around with bewildered expressions. Swoosh. Suddenly, a menacing beast claw extended from the edge of the abyss of hell and slammed into the depths of the sea, creating torrential waves. Everyone looked over instinctively. A 3-headed hound leaped out of the abyss of hell. Its entire body burned with scarlet flames and the surrounding seawater began to boil. The hound of hell had sharp fangs and sticky saliva dripped from its mouth. It glared at the old monk and the other cultivators with a bloodthirsty gaze, as though it wanted to tear them into pieces. Life form of hell. The old monk recognized the origin of the hound of hell at a glance. In the War of the Heavens back then, many life forms of hell joined the battlefield. The life forms of hell were extremely ferocious. However, Emperor Araki Takashi was the Lord of Hell back then. Under the orders of Emperor Araki Takashi, the army of hell suppressed their nature and did not harm the life forms of the middle worlds. Instead, they attacked the army of the heavenly courts. Later on, Emperor Araki Takashi perished and the army of hell fell apart. Some chose to stay in Heaven Wasteland Domain while most chose to return to hell and disappear. That hound of hell was clearly from hell. Gradually, there was a violent tremor in the abyss of hell, as though thousands of soldiers and horses were galloping out. Before anyone could react, countless life forms of hell swarmed out from behind the Hound of Hell. They were murderous and opened their bloody mouths, pouncing towards the monks and cultivators on the Grand Tai Wei mountain. When the old monk saw that, he felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that the gates of hell had been opened. In this generation, without Emperor Araki Takashi, the life forms of hell were going to wreak havoc in the heavenly courts and even the middle worlds. Hurry and leave. The surrounding space could no longer be teleported. The old monk reassured the monks and urged them to escape towards the depths of the pure land of bliss while he stood in front of the life forms of hell. At the same time, the old monk tore a message talisman to warn the Buddhist sections. Chapter 32:12. You can't escape. All Buddhists deserve to die. The first voice sounded again. A man from the nether race with a strange rune between his brows appeared. His face was pale and his eyes were dark as he walked slowly towards the old monk. Boom. The old monk held up a grotto heaven. The man from the nether race smiled contemptuously and slapped in the direction of the old monk. A cold wind whistled and the old monk's grotto heaven instantly collapsed. An imperial emperor powerhouse. The gap between them was too big. The old monk could not even last a round before he was killed by the man from the nether race. Master. The young monks did not manage to escape in time. When they saw this scene, they could not help but cry out in grief. The nether race imperial emperor looked at the group of monks who were as weak as ants in his eyes. He had a contemptuous expression and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He asked condescendingly, "Who dares to repeat what you said about the Brahma ghost mother in front of me?" More and more hell creatures surged out like locusts. They had already occupied Tai Wei Mountain and surrounded the group of young monks. As long as the nether race imperial emperor gave the order, the hell creatures would swarm over and devour them. In the face of such a situation and the pressure of an imperial emperor powerhouse, the group of young monks did not show much fear on their faces. A young novice monk who was only a mystic immortal stepped forward and said loudly, "The Brahma ghost mother is shameless. She deserves to die. Even if she is standing in front of me, I would still dare to say that." "That's right." Another young monk said in a deep voice, "You hell creatures have invaded the heavenly realm. You will pay the price. We can't defeat you, but there will always be someone in the middle world to suppress you." The nether race imperial emperor raised his eyebrows. The surrounding hell creatures understood and swarmed forward, instantly devouring the group of young monks. Not even their corpses were left behind. Although the group of young monks had died and were so weak that they could not withstand a single blow, the Ming race imperial emperor felt that something was amiss. Back then he had participated in the War of the Heavens. He had seen how the living beings of the middle world looked like after being enslaved by the heavenly court for several eras. The living beings of the middle world had long been enslaved and domesticated. Even though they knew the truth of the heavenly court enslaving all living beings, not many people dared to stand up and fight. Most of the kings and imperial emperors had lost their hot-bloodedness. 2,000 years later, the emperor of the nether race sensed a brand new spirit from these young monks. After 2,000 years, the middle world seemed to have undergone some changes. Of course, these thoughts merely flashed through his mind, and he didn't take them seriously. Countless creatures of hell crawled out of the abyss and charged toward the Nine Clouds immortal region, the pure land of bliss, and the demon region under the lead of the imperial emperors. This army of hell was like a black flood, sweeping in all directions at an astonishing speed. Not only in the heaven realm. The ruins of the heavenly court in the vast starry sky also seemed to be changing. Dark clouds covered the sky and blocked the sun. Not only did they block the ruins of the heavenly court, but they also blocked the passage to the greater world. In the thick black clouds, a huge eye was faintly discernible. It was bloodshot, and its eyes were cold as it looked down on the 3,000 worlds. Heaven Wasteland Domain. Although the middle world had been in a peaceful period all these years, there were still some imperial emperors who faintly sensed a trace of danger. For example, Elder Tai Guan, immortal King Ling Long, and the others knew that the crisis of the myriad races had yet to be resolved. A disaster that was enough to consign a medium-class world to eternal damnation would most likely erupt one day in the future. However, no one expected this day to come so soon. Ling Long, Feng Cantian Yuxia, King of Fear, and the others gathered in the Heaven Wasteland Palace with solemn expressions. They had already received news from the Heaven Realm. The Hell Realm had invaded the Heaven Realm and was on a killing spree. After 2,000 years, Ling Long had already stepped into the Emperor Realm. However, she looked more haggard and thinner than 2,000 years ago, and there was still a trace of sadness hidden in the depths of her eyes. Feng Kentian had also become a quasi-emperor. Wuxia, king of fear, had taken another step forward and cultivated to the greater success stage of the emperor realm. For example, Kitsune, Night Spirit, Yen Beichen, Demoness Ji, and the others had also made breakthroughs in their cultivation. However, they had yet to touch the threshold of the emperor realm. It was just that in 2,000 years, there were not many imperial emperors in the Heaven Wasteland domain. Most of them were from the Rakshasa race who came from the 9 Serenities sinful grounds, and the Hell Realm beings who chose to stay in the Heaven Wasteland domain, such as the Bitter Spring Hell Master, Cold Spring Hell Master, and the others. Feng Kentian said in a deep voice, "The Hell Realm has invaded on a large scale and they are not friendly. I'm afraid the Heaven Realm won't be able to resist." Both Feng Kentian and Immortal King Ling Long had stayed in the Heaven Realm for hundreds of thousands of years, and had a special feeling for the Heaven Realm. "It seems that our previous worries have become reality. This must be the work of the Lord of Hell." Elder Xian sighed. Why did this group of Hell Realm beings appear from the Heaven Realm without warning? Could it be that the Lord of Hell has already? Lin Lei frowned, wanting to say something but hesitating. Normally, there was a barrier between the Hell Realm and the Middle World, and only great emperors could break it. If the Hell Realm beings could break into the Middle World, it probably meant that the Lord of Hell had returned to his peak and become a great emperor. Not necessarily. Lin Xuanji said in a deep voice. Back then, the heavenly punishment raised the Taiwei mountain to the ground and chased Araki Takashi all the way. It pierced through the Avicii Hell and the Avicii Hell, and only then was the Lord of Hell released. That heavenly punishment probably also opened up the passage between the Middle World and the Hell Realm. Elder Xian said, even if the Lord of Hell hasn't become a great emperor, he shouldn't be too far off. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made his move at this moment. Everyone nodded. We have to save the Heaven Realm. Feng Kentian said in a deep voice, not only for the cultivators in the Heaven Realm, but also for ourselves. Everyone present knew that the Hell Realm was aggressive this time, and it was definitely not just to occupy the Heaven Realm. The Heaven Realm was only the first stronghold of the Hell Realm. With the Heaven Realm as the center, the Hell Realm would wage war everywhere and set off a bloody storm. The 3,000 domains would not be spared. Everyone had no objections to this and turned to look at Immortal King Ling Long. At this time, Immortal King Ling Long was the leader of the Heaven Wasteland domain. Of course we have to save the Heaven Realm. Immortal King Ling Long nodded and said with a worried expression, I'm worried about something else. What is it? Everyone asked subconsciously. Immortal King Ling Long raised her head slightly and looked at the faint black clouds that were gradually spreading in the sky. She said in a serious voice, I'm afraid the Hell Realm's purpose is not just to take revenge on the Heaven Realm and start a war. Immortal King Ling Long faintly sensed that there seemed to be a pair of eyes in the depths of the ruins of the Heavenly Court, watching every move of the Heaven Wasteland domain. And her gaze and divine sense seemed to be blocked by something and could no longer enter the range of the Heavenly Court. End of chapter. Chapter 32:13. Something seemed to be happening in the Heavenly Court. Ling Long Immortal Emperor took a deep breath and sent a few message talismans to the Sword Domain, Great Wasteland Domain, Dragon Domain, Blood Ape Domain, and other domains. After the War of the Heavens, these domains were already prepared to face the disaster that could befall them at any time. Ling Long Immortal Emperor led the Heaven Wasteland Domain's army of emperors and kings into the space tunnel and rushed towards the Heaven Domain. Old Xian and the others stayed behind to guard the Heaven Wasteland Domain. If they saw that the situation was not good, they would escort the Heaven Wasteland Domain to the land of inheritance left behind by the 9 Underworld Emperor to preserve their bloodline. Of course, this also meant that the entire Middle World was in a critical situation. This was the Heaven Wasteland Domain's last resort. In the space tunnel, everyone from the Heaven Wasteland Domain looked solemn. Everyone had already realized that many of them might never return from this trip. Is there any news of Zimo? Feng Kentian asked. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads. All these years, Su Zimo seemed to have evaporated from the Middle World. There was no news of him and not even a trace of him was left. Even if Ling Long Immortal Emperor and Lin Xuanji worked together to deduce, they could not deduce any information. Mo Qing said softly, I hope he doesn't appear. Everyone understood what Mo Qing meant. The War of the Heavens had only been 2,000 years ago. It was too short for a Grotto Heaven Realm king. No matter how talented or fortunate Su Zimo was, there was no way he could enter the Martial Emperor realm. The Heaven Domain. In less than a day, the flames of war had burned the entire Heaven Domain. Blood flowed like rivers and corpses were everywhere. Countless infernal realm beings rushed out of the abyss like locusts. Wherever they went, not even a blade of grass would grow. The Pure Lands were the first to fall. This group of hell creatures attacked the Pure Lands with the most ferocious attacks. Even though the Pure Lands had many Buddhist experts gathered together, they still couldn't defend against the tide of attacks. After the great emperors of the Buddhist League fell, the defensive line of the Buddhist League continued to crumble. Countless Buddhist monks perished. Large areas of the Pure Lands were reduced to ruins. The Demon Domain and the Nine Heavens Immortal Domain could not hold on for long. The people of Heaven Wasteland Domain arrived near the Heaven Realm. As soon as they came out of the space tunnel, there was a strong smell of blood that almost suffocated them. As far as the eye could see, a large expanse of blood mist was floating in the boundless starry sky. Countless severed limbs and shattered corpses were floating in the blood mist, and it was a horrifying sight. Some of the cultivators widened their eyes and fear appeared on their faces. They died with their eyes wide open. Some of the cultivators still had warm blood flowing from their broken bodies. It was obvious that they had died not long ago. Even though the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain had experienced the War of the Heavens and were used to seeing life and death, they still felt a burst of shock when they saw this scene. Everyone broke through the blood mist and continued forward. Not long after, he saw the huge land of the Heaven Realm. The originally vibrant world had now been reduced to a purgatory. The huge Heaven Realm had already been occupied by densely packed hell creatures. Slaughter was everywhere, and the cries of all living beings reverberated in the sky above the Heaven Realm. Even the divine skywood tree had withered. The Heaven Realm had fallen. The faces of the people of Heaven Wasteland Domain turned ugly. The attacks of the Hell World were too ferocious. In less than a day they had already conquered the Heaven Realm. Everywhere they passed, nothing was left. Amit Ba. Ming Zhen put his palms together and lowered his head with a sorrowful expression. Seeing this scene, Zixuan Immortal King felt a lingering fear. After the War of the Heavens, under Yunju's persuasion, he moved the Zixuan Immortal Kingdom to Heaven Wasteland Domain. More than half of the cultivators chose to follow him. However, there were still some people who were unwilling to leave their homeland and chose to stay in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. At this time, these people had already become nameless corpses in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain. If he had not listened to Yunju's advice, he would have been buried in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain with his Zixuan Immortal Kingdom. Immortal Emperor Ling Long, Mo Qin Yunju, and the others looked at the Heaven Realm with complicated expressions. After all, they were born in the Heaven Realm. Seeing the Heaven Realm in such a state, they could not help but feel sad and regretful. The sadness in Immortal Emperor Ling Long's eyes deepened. She and Lin Zhan had many memories of hundreds of thousands of years. They were all left in the Heaven Realm. At this moment, everything had turned into ruins. The people from back then were no longer here. The things in front of them had also disappeared. Save them. Feng Cantian shouted and immediately charged towards the Hell's army below. Kill. The people of Heaven Wasteland Domain followed closely behind. Boom. A thick and dazzling bolt of lightning descended from the sky, smashing into the midst of the numerous infernal realm beings, blasting open a vast expanse of empty space. In an instant, at least a few hundred hell creatures died on the spot. A large spear that was flashing with lightning and entwined with thunder stabbed deeply into the ground. A huge force spread out, and the end of the spear was still vibrating. Frightening evil spear. The Demon King of Heaven's wrath is here. The people of the Demon Realm shouted. A glimmer of hope reappeared in their disheartened eyes. Feng Cantian descended from the sky. The attack just now did not make the other hell creatures afraid. Instead, it attracted the attention of even more hell experts. 2 quasi-emperors instantly descended, and 8 hell kings surrounded Feng Cantian. Feng Cantian's gaze was like lightning. When one of the quasi-emperors met his gaze, he felt a piercing pain in his eyes and groaned. Fortunately, the hell character between his brows flickered with a dim light, allowing him to regain his senses. However, this momentary lapse of consciousness was enough to take his life. By the time he reacted, a spear that was flashing with dazzling lightning was rapidly expanding in his eyes. It was already in front of him. Before the quasi-emperor of hell could even support his heavenly abode, Feng Cantian's spear pierced through his brows and killed him on the spot. The other quasi-emperor of hell and 8 hell kings had already surrounded him. They supported their heavenly abodes and released their bloodlines. They exploded with fierce attacks and fought with Feng Cantian. Ming Zhen had just appeared, but before he could do anything, the hell creatures suddenly became extremely excited and charged in his direction. Destroy Buddhism. Erase all traces related to Buddhism, including living beings who cultivated Buddhism. This was the order of the Lord of Hell. The first hell creatures to charge forward were all blocked by Ming Zhen. Although he had just stepped into the heavenly abode realm, he had received the legacies of Ksitigarbha and Ananda, two Buddhist experts. His dharma was profound and his battle strength far exceeded his peers. Even if he faced a peerless king, he still had the power to fight. However, more and more hell creatures charged toward Ming Zhen. No matter how profound Ming Zhen's dharma was and how strong his battle strength was, he could not hold them off alone. Noticing the danger Ming Zhen was in, the 7 demon generals, apart from the Yaksha king and the Heaven's Wrath immortal king Yen Baichen, Demonist Ji, and the zither and flute demons all rushed over to protect Ming Zhen. Yunju and Mo Qin, and the others descended on the battlefield of the 9 heavens immortal domain and tried their best to save as many immortal domain cultivators and innocent living beings as possible. The monkey, night spirit, tiger, Qing Qing, little fox, and the golden lion, the 6 great demon beasts, worked together and rampaged through the hell army, killing in all directions. On the other hand, the heaven wasteland domain emperors such as the Yaksha king and the Ling Long immortal king were engaged in a fierce battle with the hell emperors. End of chapter. Chapter 32:14. In terms of the number of emperors, the heaven wasteland domain was far inferior to the infernal court. Fortunately, the infernal court had been severely damaged, and the realms of many infernal creatures were suppressed. In the past 2,000 years, although the infernal court had been repaired, there were not many top-notch emperors in the infernal court. In addition, the emperors had powerful means. Unless one's combat power was overwhelming, it was difficult to determine life and death. Although the battle between the emperors was intense, it was difficult to determine the outcome. The heaven wasteland domain could temporarily resist the attack of the infernal court's army. The most tragic was the battle between the kings. This realm had the most infernal creatures, and they constantly rushed out from the abyss of hell, all over the heaven domain. The kings of the heaven wasteland domain often had to deal with the kings of hell several times their number. On the side of the night spirit, the monkey, and the tiger, only the night spirit and the monkey had cultivated to the grotto heaven realm, while the rest had just stepped into the grotto heaven realm. But even so, with the night spirit and the monkey facing the siege of dozens of kings of hell, these demon kings were still able to defeat the other party. Even if a peak king faced the night spirit and the monkey, the 2 demon kings, it would be a disaster. The night spirit transformed into his true form. He was like a ghost, even more unpredictable than the void yakshas. His speed was even faster than that of the Rakshasa race. The night spirit shuttled through the battlefield. Before any danger landed on the 4 demon kings, the tiger, Qing Qing, the little fox, and the golden lion, he had already resolved it. It was as if he was born to kill. He wandered through the darkness and everything on his body could be turned into a killing weapon. The monkey's fighting style was completely different from that of the night spirit. The monkey held the battle imperial weapon in his hand, and behind him was a 10,000-foot battle soul. His eyes were blood red and his aura was violent. He rushed through the battlefield, holding a long staff in his arms. He was unparalleled. Some boundary emperors of the infernal court sensed that the situation on the battlefield was not right and rushed over to help, but they were stopped by the monkey. A great battle broke out between the 2 sides. The monkey released the ancient and modern battle technique and burned his lifespan. Even in the face of a boundary emperor, he was not at a disadvantage, and the more he fought, the braver he became. The quasi-emperor expert was secretly alarmed. In less than 3 breaths, a ghostly figure appeared behind him. Pucci. A pitch-black bone spike pierced through the back of the quasi-emperor expert's head. With the monkey holding back the Sky Dragon King from the front and the night spirit attacking from the shadows, even a quasi-emperor expert would not last for long under their joint efforts. Princess Yufei led the infernal creatures of heaven wasteland domain to fight against the infernal creatures of hell domain. Although they were of the same bloodline, the 2 sides had already parted ways. Now that they met, their eyes were exceptionally red, and they both saw the other side as traitors. Yuluocha led the Rakshasa clan and flew above the heaven realm battlefield, waiting for an opportunity to provide support. Lin Lei and Lin Luo led the experts from the Warring States Kingdom to the Azure Firmament Immortal Realm. After all, there were just too many creatures from hell. They were densely packed and boundless as they continuously crawled out from the depths of hell. It was as if they could never be completely wiped out. The experts of the heaven wasteland domain were scattered all over the heaven realm, fighting for themselves. Apart from Night Spirit, Monkey and the other demon kings, the situation was still under control. There was no danger. The other battlefields were also in imminent danger. The strength of the Heaven Wasteland domain alone was not enough to contend against the entire infernal court. Clang clang clang. At this moment, a series of impassioned sword cries came from afar, piercing through gold and splitting rocks. It was frightening. The next moment, a group of sword cultivators charged out of the space tunnel and descended above the heaven realm. The person in the lead was the master of the sword realm, the elder with the iron crown. The sword realm had arrived. The elder with the iron crown was a peak imperial emperor. Moreover, over the years, his battle strength had been constantly improving, and he was infinitely close to becoming a great emperor. He was also the person who had the greatest chance of becoming a great emperor in this world. The elder with the iron crown held his sword and charged into the battlefield of the great emperors. Sword radiance pierced through the air, and a blazing white light shone, as if cutting heaven and earth in half. Hell Lord Hong Quan's world was shattered by the sword of the elder with the iron crown. A sword wound so deep that bones could be seen appeared on his chest and blood gushed out. Puff. Hell Lord Hong Quan's expression was horrified, and he quickly retreated. He was almost cut down by the sword of the elder with the iron crown. The elder with the iron crown alone was enough to stabilize the battlefield of the great emperors. On the other side, accompanied by the sky full of falling flowers, Kitsune appeared. Her clothes were as white as snow, and her expression was cold. Her sword was cold as frost, and it cut across the 9 heavens. A huge sword mark spanned across the 9 heavens' immortal realm, as if the earth was cracking. Who knew how many infernal realm beings had perished under that one sword strike? Roar! The dragon's roar resounded through heaven and earth. The space outside the heavenly realm cracked open, and the dragons came to support. There were not many dragons in the first place. After the dragons and Phoenix's calamity, the dragon's vitality was greatly damaged, and there were not many dragons who came to support this time. However, these dragons had just appeared and they transformed into divine dragons and charged into the battlefield, causing a huge impact to the hell beings. Screech! Before the dragon's roar ended, the Phoenix's cry sounded. The Wudong realm had come to support. Roar! The roar of the blood apes sounded. The blood ape realm had arrived. Following closely behind, the great wasteland realm arrived and thousands of demons roared and charged. In the sky above the heavenly realm, the roar of the sea waves was deafening. Huge beings appeared one after another, bobbing up and down in the sea of stars. The great Ping spread its wings, covering the clouds and the sun. The Kunping realm had arrived. Young girls broke through the void and came near the heavenly realm. Their bodies emitted a faint fragrance, holding divine weapons, and their eyes were firm. The flower realm had come to support. Seeing this scene, many cultivators in the heavenly realm were energized. They knew that as long as these realms joined forces, they would have a chance to kill the hell beings and drive them back to the abyss of hell. With the support of these realms, the situation on the battlefield immediately changed. More and more hell beings died and their attacks were blocked, and they even began to show signs of defeat. Many cultivators became more and more excited. This battle seemed to be easier than everyone had imagined. As long as these hell beings could be driven back to the abyss of hell, the imperial emperors of the various realms could try to join forces and seal this abyss of hell. The old man with the iron crown, Immortal Emperor Ling Long, and the other imperial emperors did not relax at all. Their expressions were still solemn. They knew that since the hell world had launched an attack at this moment, it would not be so simple. Moreover, the powerhouse who could determine the direction of the battle had not appeared yet. The old man with the iron crown seemed to have sensed something, and he looked up at the sky covered by black clouds. Originally, that was where the ruins of the heavenly court were. At this moment, it was completely covered by the black clouds. Even with his divine sense, he could not penetrate it. Behind the layers of black clouds, something seemed to be nurturing. Something's wrong. The old man with the iron crown frowned. At this moment, the void above the heavenly realm split open again. A group of powerhouses filed out with murderous intent. The old man with the iron crown, Immortal Emperor Ling Long, and the others looked over and could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. The armies of the Blood Realm, Tomb Realm, Bone Realm, Lifeless Realm, and Poison Realm appeared at the same time. Back then, Su Zimo had once said that the 5 realms, including the Witch Realm, were all created by the Lord of Hell. In the War of the Heavens, because the Lord of Hell had fallen early, the 5 realms did not participate, so they were naturally spared from the disaster of war. After the War of the Heavens, the realms hunted down the remnants of the heavenly court, and then recuperated, so no one cared about the 5 realms anymore. In this life, the 5 realms appeared at the same time, which also meant that the Lord of Hell was not dead. Because other than him, no one could mobilize the powerhouses of the 5 realms at the same time. This war that started in the heavenly realm continued to escalate, involving the various realms and forces. It had completely gone out of control. Chapter 32:15. The Blood Realm, Tomb Realm, Bone Realm, Lifeless Realm, and Poison Realm were not affected too much by the War of the Heavens. In addition, after 2,000 years of recuperation, their strength had increased greatly, which caused a great impact to the Sword Realm, Dragon Realm, Wudong Realm, and other major realms that came to support. Originally, the Sword Realm, Heaven Wasteland Domain, and other realms had joined forces and suppressed the Hell creatures, forcing them to retreat. But because of the intervention of the Blood Realm and other realms, the battle situation changed again. Whether it was the King Realm or the Emperor Realm, the pressure on the experts of the Heaven Wasteland Domain, Sword Realm, Dragon Realm, and other realms increased sharply. Blood Vengeance. The old man with the iron crown forced the Emperor Realm experts in front of him to retreat. He stared at the current Lord of the Blood Realm and questioned sternly, "The Hell creatures slaughtered the common people and caused chaos in the 3,000 realms. Do you want to help the evildoers? Iron Crown, if you submit to the Lord, you still have a chance to live." The Lord of the Blood Realm said slowly with a cold expression, "If you still want to resist, you will only die." "Your Lord, the Lord of the Underworld?" The old man with the iron crown sneered, "Don't you know what kind of person Fengdu is? Before the War of the Heavens, if it weren't for Emperor Araki Takashi, the 3,000 realms would have been refined into tombs by him. Who knows how many creatures would have died? Do you think that if you follow Fengdu you will have a good ending? In front of Fengdu, you are just ants." The reason why the old man with the iron crown shouted at the experts of the Blood Realm, Tomb Realm, and other major realms was that he knew that Fengdu could not control everyone in the 5 major realms with the Yensheng curse. Among these realms, especially the experts who had experienced the War of the Heavens, there must be some who saw the nature of Fengdu and were unwilling to follow. As expected. After the old man with the iron crown said these words, some experts of the 5 major realms, including the Blood Realm, Tomb Realm, and other major realms, were slightly moved. The Lord created the Blood Realm, Tomb Realm, Lifeless Realm, Bone Realm, and Poison Realm. He is the ancestor of all realms. Whoever dares to betray the Lord is the same as betraying the ancestors. The Lord of the Blood Realm said in a cold tone. In reality, the Lord of Blood World had already been controlled by the Yensheng curse. Every word he said now was under the influence of Fengdu. These words were indeed a huge deterrent to the experts of the 5 major domains. The experts who had been slightly moved just now regained their composure and remained silent. Under the command of the 5 realm masters, the two sides collided once again, and a large amount of blood mist burst forth. The black clouds above the dimensional realm became thicker and denser. Many cultivators on the battlefield, including the Imperial Emperors, could not help but feel a strong sense of oppression. Their chests felt stuffy. The yuan qi of heaven and earth seems to be getting thinner and thinner? Feng Cantian frowned as he sensed the changes in the surrounding heaven-earth yuan qi. The other experts felt the same way. Many cultivators noticed the heavy black clouds in the sky and vaguely realized something. Their hearts sank. A heaven realm imperial emperor was covered in wounds and his face was pale. After he broke free from the battlefield, he looked at Iron Crown Elder and the others with a guilty expression. He cupped his fists and said, "Everyone, I'm sorry. I have to go first. I'll leave the middle world to you." This Heaven Realm Emperor had already realized that something was wrong. He wanted to ascend to the Great Thousand World as soon as possible and leave this place. Before he could finish his sentence, the Heaven Realm Emperor had already soared into the sky. He continued to soar and flew towards the black clouds. Whether it was the Hell Army or the Blood World and Tomb Realm Imperial Emperors, none of them stopped him. The Blood World Master and the others looked at this Heaven Realm Emperor with a trace of mockery in their eyes. "Be careful, don't go," the old man with the iron crown shouted as he hurriedly reminded them. The Heaven Realm Emperor's body paused slightly, and a trace of struggle flashed in his eyes. In the end, he did not return to the battlefield and disappeared into the black clouds. However, in less than 3 breaths this figure fell from the black clouds. His eyes were lifeless and his gaze was unfocused. He had already died. This scene caused the hearts of many cultivators on the battlefield to tremble. Just now, when they sensed that the yuan qi of heaven and earth had become thinner, They had already vaguely guessed that the path to the Great Thousand World might be blocked again. The death of this Heaven Realm Imperial Emperor also confirmed everyone's guess. It's too late to leave now. The Blood World Master smirked with a cold expression. Fengdu, come out. The old man with the iron crown swept away the surrounding Imperial Emperors with his sword. His sword light was piercingly cold, and he killed 2 Imperial Emperors in front of him in succession. He soared into the sky and roared, "What are you doing?" A soft snort came from the sky. This voice was like a heavy hammer that ruthlessly struck Iron Crown Elder's chest, causing a muffled sound. Iron Crown Elder took half a step back. His primordial spirit had suffered quite a bit of shock and his mind was dizzy. At this moment the black clouds changed and a huge and terrifying face slowly appeared. Its eyes were bottomless, like a pair of abysses that overlooked the entire middle world. An unimaginably terrifying pressure descended, and all the living beings of the myriad races were shocked. In the various realms, countless experts came out of seclusion one after another. Their expressions were uncertain as they looked up at the huge and terrifying face in the sky. The last time such a huge commotion occurred in the middle world was 2,000 years ago during the War of the Heavens. That terrifying face opened its bloody mouth as if it could swallow thousands of worlds in one gulp. At the same time in the 5 realms the experts controlled by Yen Sheng's curse opened their mouths and shouted in unison, "The heavenly court will be re-established. From today onwards I will be the master of the world, respected by all races." This voice was like rolling thunder, spreading to every corner of the 3,000 realms. All the living beings of the myriad races were shocked, and their faces were pale. The experts of Heaven Wasteland Domain and Dragon Domain on the battlefield all changed color when they heard this. Even Iron Crown Elder was shocked, and his hands and feet turned cold. Re-establish the heavenly court, re-establish the heavenly court. They thought that Fengdu, the Lord of Hell, or the Patriarch of the Academy would not let this matter rest. The middle world might face a huge catastrophe. However, no one expected Fengdu to have such thoughts. This meant that the living beings of the myriad races who had just broken free from the shackles would be enslaved and imprisoned again, unable to ascend to the vast thousand realms. The lives of all the living beings of the myriad races were only in the hands of Fengdu. And this time, with the re-establishment of the heavenly court, the living environment of the middle world might become even more cruel and dark. Fengdu, the heavenly court is broken and the situation is gone. If you dare to re-establish the heavenly court, we can attack the heavens again. Iron Crown Elder stood with his sword and said loudly. Even he himself didn't have the confidence to say this. Against Fengdu he did not have much chance of winning. Moreover, there was still the Lord of Hell, the Patriarch of the Academy, who had yet to appear. With just you. The huge face on the black cloud laughed sinisterly. Ants, the long night is coming and darkness is coming. Prepare to tremble. Geek. Fengdu, back then you were beaten to death by great Emperor Araki Takashi. You hid for 2,000 years and did not dare to appear. Now you have the face to be arrogant. A king of a lower realm stood in the air and pointed at the huge face on the black cloud in the sky. He was fearless and shouted loudly. Great Emperor Araki Takashi and Great Emperor Shuedai are dead. The era of the 2 emperors has long become a thing of the past. From today onwards I will create a new era. Then Fengdu's gaze turned and landed on the king just now. He said coldly, "You ant, how dare you order me around? I will send you to the netherworld now." A black light descended at an extremely fast speed, emitting an incomparably terrifying aura. Not to mention a cave heavenly king, even a peak imperial emperor might not be able to withstand it. Iron Crown Elder and the others were in the heavenly realm battlefield and were too far away to help. However, just as the black light was about to descend upon the king, a fair hand appeared and crushed the black light into pieces. At some point in time, a green-robed, black-haired man appeared between heaven and earth. He stepped on the river of stars and raised his head slightly to look at the huge face on the black cloud with a calm expression. End of this chapter. Chapter 32:16. Great Araki Takashi. The king of the Grotto Heaven looked excited when he saw the person who had come, and subconsciously wanted to shout out the words Great Araki Takashi. But he soon realized that although the person in front of him was Araki Takashi, the body of the great emperor had already fallen. In the end, he was unable to say the words Great Emperor. But even so, the cultivators of the 3,000 domains still felt excited and their blood surged when they saw Su Zimo appear. Araki Takashi preached the Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. In 2,000 years, Wu Dao's fire seed had spread throughout the 3,000 domains. It was also because Wu Dao had awakened the blood of many experts that the Grotto Heaven King dared to stand up and berate Fengdu. The people of Heaven Wasteland Domain also looked at Su Zimo. 2,000 years had passed. Su Zimo was still a quasi-emperor. The time was too short, and coupled with the unprecedented 5 Grotto Heavens that Su Zimo had not been able to step into the Emperor realm, it was within everyone's expectations. However, Su Zimo, who had returned this time, seemed to have undergone an indescribable change. Compared to 2,000 years ago, there was a little less sharpness, and more of an aura of time, the vicissitudes of life. Heavy, restrained, and the same as light and dust. Only the gaze contained in his eyes was still blazing. Araki Takashi, we meet again. Fengdu was not surprised to see Su Zimo appear. His voice was full of resentment and he said faintly, last time you destroyed my 3 corpses Dharma body, today I will make you pay the price. Fengdu, if I can suppress you once, then I can suppress you twice. Su Zimo's tone was indifferent, but it had unquestionable power. No one present dared to say such a thing. Even the old man with the iron crown did not have much chance of winning against Fengdu. Ah! Fengdu laughed and asked, your great emperor true body has already fallen with your incomplete Qinglian true body, you still want to suppress me. Incomplete? Su Zimo's heart moved. Qinglian had already grown to the peak of the 12th grade, how could there be incomplete? In his mind, an intermittent memory of when he stepped into the True One realm back then suddenly flashed. The demon lord and evil emperor has already ascended, and 2 emperors have fallen. No one can stop what I want to do. Under the cover of the Great Formation, the Great Netherworld Great Formation, thousands of creatures will become my puppets. Fengdu's voice sounded once more, interrupting Su Zimo's thoughts. In the current situation, a great battle could break out at any moment. He couldn't afford to let his imagination run wild, so he temporarily suppressed this thought. You're wrong. Emperor, there's me, he, and the 10,000 races, and me too. Of the heavens great heavenses, and a few to be killed. And in this life, if you want to establish the heavens great heavens again, you will have to face the conquest of the 3,000 worlds. 2,000 years ago, the heavens great heavens had enslaved the middle worlds. Just by relying on the celestial realm, they had suppressed the 10,000 races and did not dare to resist. And now, the 10,000 races living beings had seen the truth of the past and knew the existence of the vast 1,000 domains. How could they allow Fengdu to rebuild the heavens great heavens? Any cultivator with the slightest bit of bravery would rise up and fight back. Who dares? Fengdu shouted. With the help of the Great Netherworld Great Formation, he released a powerful pressure that enveloped the 3,000 worlds. Everyone, if we don't fight now, when will we? The master of the astral realm was the first to stand up and roar. Clansmen of the Grotto Heaven realm and above, follow me to conquer the heavens great heavens. The master of the barbarian world stepped forward bravely, waving a huge axe and pointing in the direction of the heavens great heavens. I didn't personally experience the War of the Heavens back then, but I definitely won't miss the second War of the Heavens. The master of the mysterious world also stood up. The middle worlds were vast and boundless. Under the shroud of the great netherworld great formation, there was no daylight. And at this moment, in the boundless dark starry sky, experts from various major domains rose into the sky one by one. Like flames that cut through the long night, they dispelled the surrounding darkness and lit up the night sky. 2,000 years ago, Araki Takashi preached the Tao and left behind the seed of Wu Dao. Finally, at this moment, it was burning. More and more experts from different domains stood up. Before long, more than half of them had stood up. Moreover, this number was still continuously increasing. Even the light world and the stone world, who once had deep hatred with the heaven wasteland domain and the sword world, chose to put aside their past grievances and stood up to stand on Su Zimo's side. Fight! 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 Burn my broken body, burn my blood, I swear I won't return until the heavens great heavens are destroyed. When the 10,000 races of the 3,000 worlds could gather together, it would be an unimaginably terrifying force that was enough to turn the world upside down. The general situation had begun to tilt. The darkness of the long night formed by the netherworld great formation could not suppress the flames that appeared in the middle worlds. Although they were just sparks, they had already formed a prairie fire that lit up the heavens and illuminated the mountains and rivers. This scene was incomparably shocking. Even the battlefield of the heaven realm paused for a moment. Countless experts turned to look. Ba. Ming Zhen pressed his palms together with a compassionate expression. He could not help but recall the words Su Zimo left behind at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley back then. Once the dust clears, light shines through the mountains and rivers. That was Su Zimo's reply to Dai Yu. Unfortunately, Dai Yu had already perished by the time the scene of light shone through the mountains and rivers appeared and did not have the chance to witness it. Even Fengdu, who was overseeing the Netherworld Great Formation, felt a huge pressure. However, he knew that as long as he suppressed Su Zimo, the experts of the 3,000 worlds were nothing but a mob that was nothing to fear. Araki Takashi, let's settle the grudge from 2,000 years ago today. Fengdu manifested a figure draped in a wide, pitch-black robe and transformed into a world behind him that suppressed Su Zimo. There was an entire major cultivation realm difference between the two of them. However, Su Zimo was fearless as his blood qi surged. A jade-green Qinglian that connected heaven and earth appeared behind him and shone brightly. The bloodline phenomenon of the Grade 12 creation Qinglian was condensed. At the same time, Su Zimo summoned his four-headed and eight-armed state. He controlled the nine heavens breath soil with one hand and the tri-jade Rui scepter with the other. He waved the Tai horsetail whisk with one hand and wielded the Qingping sword with the other. Boom. Immediately after, 5 grotto heavens appeared around Su Zimo at the same time. At the start of the battle, Su Zimo had already channeled his blood qi to its limits and summoned his 5 grotto heavens to clash against Fengdu. Boom. There was a deafening bang that shook the world. A huge halo spread out in all directions, creating layers of ripples in the sea of stars that quickly engulfed the two of them. Countless stars in the surroundings were reduced to dust. The battle in the heaven realm continued, but most people's gazes and attention were on the battle between Su Zimo and Fengdu. After all, this battle was of great importance. Furthermore, Su Zimo was only a quasi-emperor and the difference between their realms was too great. Even the old man with the iron crown was worried. A moment later, the figures of the two of them appeared again and remained in a stalemate. Under the suppression of Fengdu's great perfection world, Su Zimo's 5 grotto heavens did not show any signs of collapsing. Instead, they were on par with him and were not at a disadvantage. Chapter 32:17. The confrontation this time also shocked Fengdu. There was a difference of a major realm between the two of them. He originally thought that victory was within his grasp, but he did not expect that his world could not shake Su Zimo's 5 grotto heavens at all. At close range, Fengdu could feel it even more clearly. Although the 5 grotto heavens around Su Zimo had yet to become a world, they contained extremely terrifying energy fluctuations. Although I don't have Wu Dao's true body, you have also lost the 3-corpse avatar. As though he could see the shock in Fengdu's heart, Su Zimo said indifferently, even if your essence spirit is still at the level of a great emperor, your physical body is still far from comparable to the 3 corpses' dermic body after 2,000 years. Fengdu's expression darkened. Su Zimo's words had indeed hit the nail on the head. Back then, he had severed the good corpse, evil corpse, and self-corpse from his own body and descended into the middle world to become immortal Emperor Qinmu. The World Annihilation Demon Emperor and Emperor Bo Sun were all top existences that dominated an area. After a lifetime of cultivation, he realized that it was difficult to break through. Only then did he use the Heaven Burial Scripture to absorb the power in the tomb of the great emperor and awaken his memories. The 3-corpse avatar was to sever his good and evil obsessions and perfectly fuse with his essence soul without any conflict. In 2,000 years, it was very difficult for him to cultivate the 3-corpse avatar at its peak. He could only piece together some powerful corpses and flesh and barely forge his current physical body. It was very difficult for this physical body to perfectly fuse with his essence soul. It was also because of this that although they were both peak Imperial Emperor bodies, they could not compare to any of the 3-corpse avatar, let alone the physical body after the 3-corpse avatar had fused. The power of the world that he cultivated was also greatly reduced. If it were 2,000 years ago, he would definitely be able to suppress Su Zimo with the 3-corpse avatar at its peak. Of course, Fengdu did not panic. Even if he did not use his trump card, the outcome of this battle between the two was still unpredictable. Moreover, he still had the great emperor-level essence soul. Boom, boom, boom. The underworld and the 5 grotto heavens collided continuously, emitting dazzling light between heaven and earth. The galaxy shook and the void collapsed. Fengdu had lived for an unknown number of years and oversaw the netherworld. He was experienced and had many tricks up his sleeve. Su Zimo could use almost all of the methods that he could control. On the other hand, Su Zimo's advantage lay in the strength of Qinglian. His 5 heavenly abodes withstood the impact of the underworld world, and with his 4 heads and 8 arms, he was incomparably valiant. Both sides fought fiercely. A bloody mist pervaded the air from the blue skies to the underworld, causing the heavens and earth to be turned upside down. The sun and moon lost their radiance, and even the stars in the heavens lost their luster. As the battle between Su Zimo and Fengdu broke out, more and more experts of different domains stood up and rushed to the Heaven Realm battlefield. They joined forces with the experts of Heaven Wasteland Domain, Sword Domain, and other domains to resist the army of Hell and the allied forces of the Blood Domain, Poison Domain, and other domains. This battle was not only for the Heaven Realm, but also for the myriad races themselves. Once the Heavenly Court was re-established, all living beings would be imprisoned and enslaved again, never to see the light of day again. Su Zimo and Fengdu fought fiercely. Both sides fought fiercely and neither of them retreated. As time went by, Fengdu gradually felt a trace of exhaustion. This was a middle world after all, and there was no supply of Genesis Qi. To maintain the underworld world required a huge consumption. And Su Zimo's 5 heavenly abodes absorbed Heaven Earth Yuan Qi. The 5 heavenly abodes exerted their power at the same time, connecting the heavens. While fighting with Fengdu, they absorbed and plundered the Heaven Earth Yuan Qi of the 3,000 domains. The longer the battle lasted, the more advantageous it was for Su Zimo. Moreover, Su Zimo had the body of the grade 12 creation Qinglian, and his self-healing ability was astonishing. Coupled with the defense of the 9 heavens living soil, even if he was slightly injured, he would quickly heal and not affect his battle strength. Fengdu's situation was different. His physical body was pieced together from the corpses and flesh of many experts, and could not be compared to the body of the creation Qinglian. After a few close-range battles, his physical body was already covered in cuts and bruises, and was extremely damaged. When the 3,000 whisks of the Tai horsetail whisk whipped his body, large patches of scars would appear, and his flesh would be badly mutilated. When the 3 jade rui fell, a large hole would appear on his body. The sharpness of the Qinglian sword was even more terrifying. If he had not relied on several emperor weapons to desperately resist the Qinglian sword, his body would have been cut in 2. If this continued, even if he did not die, his vitality would be greatly damaged. Araki Takashi, your Qinglian body is indeed not bad. It will belong to me from now on. Fengdu suddenly screamed. Accompanied by a flickering light between his brows, an extremely terrifying power suddenly burst forth, silently enveloping Su Zimo. When this power descended, the world suddenly became quiet. Everything was silent. A terrifying pressure that had not appeared in 2,000 years shrouded the 3,000 worlds. This was the power of a great emperor's divine sense. A ghostly fire drifted over. Fengdu wanted to use his emperor-level primordial spirit to directly destroy Su Zimo's primordial spirit. In the face of this primordial spirit attack, Su Zimo's expression was calm as if he had already expected it. In fact, after his realm reached the quasi-emperor realm, his primordial spirit realm had already reached the greater success of the emperor realm. And after 2,000 years of wandering and experiencing the grief of the departure of his loved ones, his Tao heart became stronger and stronger, and he comprehended many forbidden techniques. Although he was restricted by his realm and could not release the true forbidden techniques, as he comprehended these forbidden techniques, the power of his primordial spirit also continued to rise. Now, it had even reached the perfected emperor realm. Of course, it was only the perfected emperor realm. It was still unable to withstand Fengdu's primordial spirit's secret technique. Whoosh! Su Zimo's eyes lit up. A 100,000 feet tall phantom rose from the ground, connecting heaven and earth. Battle intent surged and merged with the bloodline phenomenon behind him. Behind him, a mysterious river appeared. Su Zimo held a horsetail whisk, a sword and a turtle snake, standing in the long river of time. The secret technique of fighting ancient and modern was activated. Su Zimo's physical body and primordial spirit power soared again. Under the situation of consuming 10,000 years of lifespan in a breath, the power of his primordial spirit had already surpassed the perfected emperor realm and was infinitely close to that of a great emperor. That was enough. Dragon's secret technique, reverse scale. The last of the 3 secret skills of the perfection of Nirvana Sutra, Nirvana silence. Coupled with the essence spirit attack released by Qinglian's sword. 3 top-notch essence spirit secret techniques burst forth and charged towards Fengdu's essence spirit secret technique. At the same time, in Su Zimo's consciousness, golden light spread and Sanskrit reverberated endlessly. Various Buddhas appeared and dragons and elephants trumpeted. Qinglian's essence spirit sat upright on the grade 12 creation lotus platform with her palms pressed together. She lowered her head and looked different. Rays of light spewed out from the lotus cave and surrounded her. The surrounding petals closed and protected Qinglian's essence spirit, forming an impenetrable defensive barrier. Su Zimo did not dare to be careless. In the blink of an eye, his essence spirit attack and defense trump cards were all used to defend against Fengdu's essence spirit secret technique. Fengdu's essence spirit was indeed powerful and invincible. However, no matter how strong his essence spirit was, there was a limit. After the will-o'-the-wisp broke through its reverse scale, its power weakened slightly. After crushing the Nirvana Silence Dermic seal, it lost quite a bit of its power and the flame shrank. When it collided with Qinglian's sword, the will-o'-the-wisp was already at the end of its tether. It charged into Su Zimo's consciousness and faced the attacks of the Buddhas, dragons and elephants. When it arrived in front of the Creation Lotus platform, the will-o'-the-wisp had already turned into flickering sparks that posed almost no threat. When it collided with the petals of the Creation Lotus platform, it extinguished instantly without leaving a mark. End of chapter. Chapter 32:18. Under the augmentation of the ancient and modern battle, Su Zimo's aura surged and his gaze intensified. His left eye was pitch black and his right eye was pure white. He looked at Fengdu and said indifferently, "Fengdu, you've lost." Boom. Two beams of light, one black and one white, burst forth from Su Zimo's eyes and landed on the Tai horsetail whisk. With yin and yang as the ink and Tai as the brush. 6 ding and 6 jia in the book, gods and ghosts shall disperse. Su Zimo held the Tai horsetail whisk and quickly wrote 12 mysterious runes in the void as he shouted softly. Under the activation of the power of yin and yang released by candle illumination and nether glow, the 12 runes instantly transformed into 12 terrifying heavenly gods in front of Su Zimo. 6 men and 6 women, Tai secret technique, 6 ding and 6 jia gods. The reason why this secret technique was only released now was because the combat strength of the 6 ding and 6 jia gods was directly related to the power of the essence spirit. The stronger the essence spirit, the stronger the secret technique and the stronger the combat strength of the 6 ding and 6 jia gods. At that moment, Su Zimo released the battle 9 heavens and the power of his essence spirit was pushed to its limits, infinitely close to that of a great emperor. This also meant that by relying on this Tai secret technique, he could create 12 heavenly gods whose combat strength was infinitely close to that of a great emperor. Of course, the 6 ding and 6 jia gods were only condensed with the power of yin and yang. Without an essence spirit they could not condense a world. Their true combat strength was definitely incomparable to experts of the same realm. However, in melee combat, Fengdu could not withstand the combined forces of the 12 heavenly gods. Su Zimo's eyes shone as he stepped on a turtle and snake and held a horsetail whisk in his hand. With the 6 ding and 6 jia gods behind him, he stepped on the river of time and pointed at Fengdu with a torrential aura. "Kill." He gave the order. Su Zimo and the 6 ding and 6 jia gods charged towards Fengdu at the same time. Like a magnificent army, they burst forth with an unstoppable aura on the astral battlefield. Fengdu's expression was aghast, and he was greatly alarmed. His fleshly body was already badly damaged from the battle just now. Even a great emperor-level primordial spirit couldn't do anything to Su Zimo. Right now, Su Zimo was leading 12 heavenly deities with terrifying auras. How was he supposed to defend himself? Boom, boom, boom. The 5 grotto heavens once again launched an attack on Fengdu's underworld. At the same time, Su Zimo and the 12 heavenly gods unleashed a torrential attack to kill Fengdu. Fengdu might not be able to win against Su Zimo alone. Moreover, there were also 12 heavenly gods with terrifying close-range combat prowess. Both sides exchanged blows again, and in almost an instant, Fengdu had already begun to retreat. In his underworld world, countless ghost emperors rushed out, holding up a world and blocking in front of Su Zimo. However, the worlds condensed by these ghost emperors couldn't even withstand the battle spears and long swords of the 12 heavenly deities, let alone fight against Su Zimo. The war spear danced and the universe was reversed. The long sword streaked across the sky, cutting through heaven and earth. After Su Zimo summoned the 6 ding and 6 jia gods, he had already formed a crushing momentum and started a massacre. He was unstoppable. Seeing this scene, the living beings of all races felt incomparably excited. Even great Emperor Araki Takashi from back then was probably only SOSO. Why aren't you attacking? Are you waiting for me to be killed by him again? Fengdu dragged his broken body and retreated step by step. He could only rely on the power of the Netherworld Array to temporarily block the attacks of Su Zimo and the 6 Ding and 6 Jia gods. He was in a sorry state and screamed. Hee hee. Right at this moment, a sinister laugh sounded from heaven and earth, causing one to shudder. The next moment, a black-haired man appeared. He wore armor made of white bones that protected his vital parts tightly and held a bone spear in his hand. This man suddenly appeared in the starry sky and stood between heaven and earth. He looked down at Su Zimo and the 6 Ding and 6 Jia gods beside him with a cold gaze. His eyes seemed to reflect mountains of corpses and seas of blood. An unimaginably majestic pressure enveloped the 3,000 worlds and suppressed the hearts of the living beings of all races. This kind of pressure had only appeared when the great emperor descended during the War of the Heavens 2,000 years ago. Even when Fengdu appeared just now, he did not have such an aura. Everyone on planet Tianhuang looked at the man between heaven and earth and had already guessed his identity. They could not help but look pale and solemn. The Lord of Hell. This was a true great emperor expert. He was a terrifying existence that was on par with the Fiend Lord, the Evil Emperor, and the Brahma Ghost Mother back then. If the Emperor of Infinity had not sacrificed himself and used his flesh and blood to create the Avicii Hell to imprison this terrifying existence, who knew how much bloodshed this terrifying existence would have caused in the middle world? The heavenly tribulation 2,000 years ago not only killed the great Emperor Araki Takashi at that time, but also leveled the Taiwei Mountain and pierced through the Avicii Hell. This terrifying existence that had been suppressed for 2 eras was also released in this life. The Lord of Hell had returned and was bound to take revenge and start a massacre. Su Zimo, who was inextricably linked to the Emperor of Infinity, was the first to bear the brunt. The Lord of Hell might let some people go, but he would never let Su Zimo go. Why did you only come out now? Fengdu glanced at the Lord of Hell with a trace of resentment. The Lord of Hell said indifferently, "Since you want to become the Lord of Heaven and Earth, I naturally have to give you a chance to show your power. I did not expect that you could not even suppress a small ant." Fengdu snorted coldly. My 3 corpses Dharma body was destroyed by him 2,000 years ago. If not, I would not have been defeated. The Lord of Hell did not continue to argue with Fengdu. Instead, he turned to look at Su Zimo and said in a cold voice, "You have indeed inherited the methods of the bald donkey Infinity. Since I have returned, I will erase all traces of infinity in this world. I will kill the ants that cultivate Buddhism. I will kill all living beings that are related to infinity even more." As soon as this sentence was finished, it spread throughout the 3,000 realms. These were the words of the great emperor, and they contained the will of the great emperor. Not to mention the ordinary living beings, even the imperial emperors were stunned for a moment. An invisible force shrouded the hearts of many experts. In this life, without the great emperor Araki Takashi and the great emperor Shuedai, who else could suppress the Lord of Hell? Could it be that they hoped that at this moment, there would be someone in the middle world who could prove their Tao as a great emperor? The hearts of many experts gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. If the others were already in such a state, one could imagine the pressure that Su Zimo, who was confronting the Lord of Hell, was facing. However, to everyone's surprise, there was no trace of panic or fear on Su Zimo's face. His face was as calm as still water. Even in the face of the Lord of Hell, who had returned with great force, Su Zimo's eyes were still like an ancient well, without any fluctuations. "You should not have come back," Su Zimo suddenly said in a calm voice. "Oh?" The Lord of Hell raised his eyebrows. He did not understand the meaning of Su Zimo's words. Su Zimo said slowly, "If you had obediently ascended to the great 1,000 realms, it would have been fine. However, since you have chosen to return to the middle world, I will suppress you again on behalf of the Infinity Emperor." End of chapter. Chapter 32:19. The King of Hell's face darkened when he heard the name of the Wuji Emperor. You want to suppress me?" The King of Hell squinted his eyes and stared at Su Zimo coldly. Not only the King of Hell, but the others could not believe that Su Zimo, who was only at the Emperor to be realm, could suppress a great emperor. Even the martial Tao body back then couldn't do this. When Fengdu heard this, it was as if he had heard the biggest joke in the world. He sneered with a disdainful expression. Su Zimo could fight with him, but he was no match for the King of Hell. The King of Hell was a true great emperor. The difference in their combat power was like the difference between heaven and earth. Su Zimo said calmly, "Not only will I suppress you, but I will also imprison you in the hell of Avicii so that you will never be reincarnated." When the king of hell heard the hell of Avicii, he seemed to be greatly agitated. He recalled the pain he had suffered for 2 eras and suddenly became manic. He let out a long roar. "Da Yuan!" The king of hell looked ferocious and his eyes were filled with hatred. The blood in his body surged and the eerie hell behind him appeared. He reached out his huge hand and a Dao seal appeared in his palm. He slammed it down on Su Zimo. The king of hell was furious and used almost all of his strength in this attack. Not only did he release his blood, but he also held up a world and condensed the Dao seal of the great emperor. He was determined to kill Su Zimo on the spot. Before that palm strike even landed, the stars in the star region around Su Zimo were reduced to dust. Under the cover of the huge hand, Su Zimo's escape route was sealed. The first to suffer were the 6 Ding and 6 Jia gods who were guarding around him. After all, the 6 Ding and 6 Jia gods did not have flesh and blood and primordial spirits. They were only condensed from the power of the sun and yin. They were not true great emperors. The king of hell's palm, which was supported by the Dao seal, was extremely fragile. Before the king of hell's palm could touch them, the 6 Ding and 6 Jia gods could not withstand it. They collapsed and turned into the power of yin and yang and disappeared into heaven and earth. Ka. The bloodline vision and fighting soul behind Su Zimo were also crushed by the king of hell's giant hand. Under the gazes of countless people, the lord of hell's gigantic hand descended from the sky. Su Zimo was truly as small as an ant. The difference was too great. The experts of the Heaven Wasteland domain, the Sword domain, the Blood Ape domain, the Great Wasteland domain and other domains all felt a sense of powerlessness when they saw this scene. Even if they wanted to help, it would be useless. Before they could even enter the range of the giant hand, they were already dead. In the face of the king of hell's attack, Su Zimo seemed to already know the outcome. He did not dodge. Instead, he closed his eyes and gave up resisting. However, no one noticed that right before Su Zimo closed his eyes, a bright light flashed through the depths of his eyes. From the heart to the heart, there is no place for the heart to stay, no worries about life and death, no illusions of the body and mind extinguish. Dharma is empty in all directions, there is no self in all Dharma. Su Zimo lowered his eyebrows and eyes and recited scriptures. However, the surrounding heaven and earth collapsed and the starry sky collapsed. Amidst the deafening roar, his recitation was quickly drowned out. No one could hear it anymore. The 5 grotto heavens continued to spew out beams of light with phenomenons that protected Su Zimo's surroundings. The king of hell's gigantic hand descended and the Dao seal flashed. The 5 heavenly caves were still supporting and protecting Su Zimo, who was in the middle. However, the difference in power between the two sides was too great. The 5 heavenly caves collapsed completely and were annihilated by the king of hell's palm. They turned into nothingness. Even Su Zimo disappeared without a trace. Not even a drop of blood was left behind. It was as if the king of hell's palm had wiped him off the face of heaven and earth, leaving no trace behind. The heaven and earth gradually returned to peace. The armies that were fighting on the battlefield also gradually stopped fighting. Sighs could be heard all over the 3,000 realms. What a pity. Fengdu licked his lips and said, "Araki Takashi's Qinglian body was not bad, but you destroyed it just like that." The king of hell frowned. There were countless beings in the world, but he was the only one who could sense a trace of abnormality. His attack just now was indeed terrifying. It was enough to kill that quasi-emperor ant. However, this palm strike was simply too clean. There was not even a drop of blood. The feeling he got was that desolate marshal did not seem to have been killed by him, but had suddenly disappeared. Had he disappeared right in front of him? How was that possible? A dim light surged in the king of hell's eyes. He released a secret eye technique and looked in the direction where Su Zimo had disappeared. The king of hell's expression changed slightly. What's wrong? Fengdu asked subconsciously when he saw the king of hell's expression. Not bad. He's not dead. Fengdu's eyes were dark and murderous. He stared at the direction where Su Zimo had disappeared and said in a bone-chilling voice, "He's not dead." Fengdu hurriedly released his divine sense and swept it across the starry sky. Just as he had expected. Under his divine sense, there was indeed a figure hiding there. It was Su Zimo who had just disappeared. However, Su Zimo's state was a little strange. It was as if he had sunk into layers of space. It was as if there was nothingness and no technique could touch him. Is this a forbidden spatial technique? Fengdu frowned and reacted immediately. However, he soon asked doubtfully, This person is only a quasi-emperor. How could he release a forbidden technique and evade your attack? The King of Hell's palm had not retracted. It was still suspended in the starry sky and could descend at any time. At this moment, the King of Hell suddenly felt a sharp pain in his palm. He subconsciously retracted his palm and could not help but be shocked. Even though he had just noticed that Su Zimo was not dead, he did not pay much attention to it. However, the sharp pain in his palm made his heart tremble. This meant that the force from before was already capable of injuring him and even threatening him. Then, under everyone's gaze, Su Zimo's figure appeared in the empty starry sky battlefield once again. He could not maintain his state of nothingness for too long. At this moment, the 5 grotto heavens behind him had already collapsed and disappeared. In their place was a world that seemed to contain heaven and earth, yin and yang, the 5 elements, wind, rain, thunder, lightning, life and death. This world seemed to contain everything and tolerate nothing. When everyone looked over with rapt attention, everything inside had disappeared. What replaced it was a hazy gray fog which was blurry and unclear. Vaguely they could see a jade-green Qinglian soaring into the sky and swaying with light. This is Araki Takashi's world? Zimo has entered the martial emperor realm. When the old man with the iron crown and the others saw this scene, they finally reacted and were overjoyed. I know now. Ling Long Immortal Emperor was enlightened and muttered softly, Zimo was using the King of Hell's hand to destroy his 5 grotto heavens and merge them back into one to form a world. Zimo's words just now and the mention of the Avicii Emperor and the Avicii Hell were to provoke the King of Hell and make him attack with all his might. End of chapter. Chapter 32:20. All these years, Su Zimo had been traveling outside, sensing the world and comprehending Taoist techniques. His 5 grotto heavens had become increasingly powerful and indestructible. If he wanted to merge the 5 grotto heavens, he had to have enough power to destroy them, rebuild them, and merge them again. With Su Zimo's own strength, he couldn't do that at all. Even Fengdu couldn't destroy his 5 grotto heavens. Only great emperors had absolute power. Immortal Emperor Ling Long's guess was right. Su Zimo's words just now were to anger the Lord of Hell. The Avicii Hell had been penetrated and couldn't imprison the Lord of Hell at all. But when he heard about the Avicii Great Emperor and the Avicii Hell, the Lord of Hell couldn't help but recall the pain and torture he had suffered for 2 eras. He was enraged. Su Zimo also used the Lord of Hell to break through the bottleneck and step into the Great Emperor realm. Just as the 5 grotto heavens merged and formed a world, some fragmented memory fragments appeared in his mind again. There were many overlaps with the memory fragments when he stepped into the True Self realm. There was blood and bones everywhere. All living beings wailed and withered. Apart from that, some new fragmented images appeared. There was yin and yang, lightning, slaughter, fire. These gradually disappeared and in the end, everything returned to a state of chaos. It was gray and blurry. There was no light and no darkness. There were no 5 elements and he couldn't feel the existence of space. He couldn't even feel the passage of time. Then the chaos suddenly exploded and turned into black, gold, red, and green lights. They scattered at the end of the void and disappeared. And the green light seemed to fall from the sky, penetrating layers of the void and breaking through layers of barriers, and fell on Su Zimo's head. In the next moment, Su Zimo's body shook violently and he suddenly woke up. All of the memory fragments and intermittent scenes from just now had already disappeared. As for his world, it had already been formed. In this world, all the Taoists and techniques of the 5 grotto heavens were merged. There were immortals, Buddhas, demons, heaven and earth, yin and yang, 5 elements, wind, rain, thunder, lightning, life and death. All techniques returned to one. In the end, these Taoist arts and forbidden secret scriptures became Su Zimo's fortune and fused into a world. Su Zimo originally thought that after stepping into the Emperor realm, he would be able to form a world of fortune. But at this moment, he faintly sensed that the world he'd condensed didn't just contain the energy of creation. In other words, the creation was only a part of it. Chaos, a thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind as he suddenly thought of that word. He had come into contact with the theory of chaos back in Tianhuang mainland. At that time, Di Yin, who had once been his enemy, had comprehended 2 Jin Dan avatars in the Jin Dan realm, the primal chaos sea and the world-cleansing Qinglian. He fused the 2 Jin Dan phenomenons together and created a new phenomenon, a Qinglian that was born in the sea of chaos. However, Su Zimo's creation Qinglian wasn't something that the world-cleansing Qinglian could compare to. The chaos that appeared in his memories wasn't the primal chaos sea that Di Yin had comprehended. The chaos in those memory fragments was more primordial, more ancient, and more mysterious. This chaos seemed to be able to comprehend the mysteries of heaven and earth. It wasn't just a matter. And the creation Qinglian seemed to be inextricably linked to this chaos. But now that he was facing a great enemy, he didn't have time to think too much. Su Zimo decided to temporarily call the world behind him the primal chaos world. The Lord of Hell, who was not far away, calmed down. He also realized that he had been used, and his gaze turned even darker. He looked at the world that Su Zimo had condensed behind him and narrowed his eyes. What had caused him to feel a piercing pain was this world. Of course it was only a piercing pain. It was still far from being a match for him. After all, he was a great emperor. Even if Su Zimo had stepped into the great emperor realm, there was still a huge gap between them. When a great emperor condensed a Tao seal, his strength had already reached another level. Zimo has stepped into the great emperor realm. It seems like the middle world has a chance of surviving this calamity. When Feng Kentian saw this, his spirits were lifted. I don't think so. The old man with the iron crown still looked worried. He said softly, when Araki Takashi had just entered the great emperor realm, he could only barely hold on against the combined attacks of the White Sky Lord and Fengdu. He even lost an arm. When the other experts heard this, they also recalled the scene back then and nodded secretly. Back then, when facing the combined attacks of the White Sky Lord and Fengdu, Wu Dao's original body was indeed severely injured and showed signs of defeat. Dai Yu had become a great emperor and joined the battle. She stood side by side with Araki Takashi and turned the situation around. After the start of the War of the Heavens, for some reason, Araki Takashi's combat strength suddenly increased greatly. He could even fight against several great emperors with his own strength. However, it also led to a disaster. Immortal King Ling Long nodded and said, Zimo's Wu Dao's true body is an anomaly. It jumped out of the 3 realms and is not in the 5 elements. Because of this, after he released some kind of secret technique, his combat strength could break through the suppression of the middle world and reach another level. Although Zimo's Qinglian's true body is the only one in the world, it is not an anomaly. It is still within the rules of the heavenly Tao. The other experts revealed a look of realization. In other words, when Su Zimo stepped into the great emperor realm, no matter how strong his combat strength was, there was an upper limit. At most, it was close to the Lord of Hell. And on the Lord of Hell's side, there was Fengdu, who was close to the great emperor's combat strength. The joy that surged out of everyone was once again washed away by the worry that followed. The situation that Su Zimo was facing now was actually very similar to the situation 2,000 years ago. It was still Su Zimo facing a great emperor and Fengdu together. However, this time, Su Zimo was not an anomaly. He also did not know a secret technique that could break through the rules of the heavenly Tao like Wu Dao. He also did not have Great Emperor Blood Butterfly by his side. Araki Takashi, this time you don't have that Great Emperor Blood Butterfly by your side. Let's see who else can help you. Fengdu also thought of this and shouted loudly. I don't need anyone's help to suppress the 2 of you. Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly. He held up a world and unleashed the secret technique of ancient and modern combat. He stepped on the river of time and went against the flow. Facing the Lord of Hell and Fengdu, he attacked first. He crossed the Sea of Stars in one step and descended in front of the Lord of Hell. You're courting death. The Lord of Hell was wearing a white bone armor and holding a white bone saber. Behind him, a dark and gloomy hell appeared. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood appeared. The smell of blood filled the sky and suppressed Su Zimo. At the same time, Fengdu also attacked with the underworld world. Boom. Su Zimo's world collided with the underworld world and exploded with an earth-shattering sound. The underworld world also descended, causing the chaos world to tremble continuously. The creation of the world, Qinglian, also shook continuously and released balls of brilliance. As the battle between the 3 experts broke out, the killing on the Heaven Realm battlefield began again. More and more domains joined in and more experts rushed to the Heaven Realm battlefield to fight side by side with the cultivators of the Heaven Wasteland domain and the Sword World. Even with the endless number of creatures crawling out from the abyss of Hell, even with the alliance of the Blood World, the Tomb World and the other 5 domains, the Heaven Wasteland domain gradually stabilized the situation. The most important thing was still the battle between the great emperors. End of chapter. Chapter 32-21. Between Heaven and Earth. When Su Zimo stepped into the Arch Realm, his lifespan also increased dramatically. Ordinary grotto heavenly kings had a lifespan of 1,000,000 years, while ordinary imperial emperors had a lifespan of about 10 million years. And Su Zimo had condensed 5 grotto heavens, so his lifespan was 5 million years. After the 5 grotto heavens merged and transformed into the chaos world, his lifespan increased by 10 times, reaching an astonishing 50 million years. With such a long lifespan, Su Zimo also extended the state of fighting ancient and modern. Even if fighting ancient and modern consumed an astonishing amount of lifespan, Su Zimo could still maintain his peak state for a long time. And stepping into the Arch realm and releasing the battle ancient and modern also allowed Su Zimo's primordial spirit to completely break through the realm barrier and reach the Arch realm. In the battle, Fengdu once again released the primordial spirit secret technique and even cast a primordial spirit curse on Su Zimo. It was all resolved by Su Zimo with the help of the Arch realm primordial spirit. At this level, Fengdu was no longer a threat to Su Zimo. Fengdu's underworld world had a limited impact on the chaos world. The real pressure came from the terrifying power of the Lord of Hell. Su Zimo's chaos world could no longer hold on under the suppression of the underworld world and the underworld world. It was on the verge of collapse. Even if he stepped into the Arch realm and his combat strength increased sharply, giving birth to the chaos world, he still couldn't fight against a true Arch. The difference in strength between the Arch realm and the Arch realm was too great. Even back then, the powerful Wu Dao's original body was seriously injured by the joint forces of the White Sky Lord and Fengdu without releasing the Yuan Wu world. If he continued to fight, the Chaos world would have collapsed before his lifespan was exhausted. Seeing that the situation was settled, the Lord of Hell's attacks became more and more fierce. He sneered and said, "Araki Takashi, even if you step into the Arch realm, you won't be able to touch my level. Today you will definitely die." Not necessarily. Su Zimo's expression was fearless when he heard this, and his gaze was like a torch. Suddenly he tossed the Tai Horsetail Whisk, the Trijade Rui Scepter, the 9 Heaven Life Soil, and the Qinglian Sword into the air before controlling them with his divine sense to protect his surroundings. As a result, all 8 of his arms were free. For some reason, Fengdu suddenly felt his heart palpitate, and he couldn't help but frown slightly as he shouted, "Be careful." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zimo's forehead shone with light at the same time. He activated his primordial spirit and his 4 palms kept changing in mid-air. His fingers moved nimbly as if he was plucking the strings of a guqin. Mist surged between the gaps of his fingers. It was as if numerous faintly discernible Grand Daos had been born, and they emitted a terrifying aura. Forbidden technique? The Lord of Hell was slightly taken aback, but then he sneered, "When one's technique reaches the pinnacle, it's close to the Tao. The so-called forbidden arts are merely the pinnacle of magical techniques. They are only infinitely close to the Tao but have yet to touch the true Tao. In my hell I have already condensed a complete Tao seal. Only when the great Tao manifests can the Tao seal manifest." The great Tao was formless. It couldn't be seen nor could it be touched. Only when one's comprehension of a certain magical technique reached the pinnacle could the great Tao be manifested in the form of a Tao seal and merge it with the world that one cultivated. Under normal circumstances, this was an insurmountable gap in strength. Therefore, in the Lord of Hell's opinion, no matter what kind of forbidden technique Su Zimo had comprehended, it was still just a magical technique. His Tao seal was enough to destroy it. However, as soon as the Lord of Hell finished speaking, his expression changed slightly. He stared at Su Zimo's 4 palms and said seriously, "These are 4 types of forbidden techniques. Since ancient times, there were very few experts in the Emperor realm who could comprehend 2 types of forbidden techniques. Even in the Great Thousand World, there were only a few experts who could comprehend more than 2 types of forbidden techniques. The Lord of Hell had never thought that Su Zimo could comprehend 4 different types of forbidden techniques. What was even more terrifying was that he could release 4 types of forbidden techniques at the same time. One had to know that forbidden techniques were extremely taxing on one's primordial spirit. It was useless for an Emperor realm expert to comprehend too many forbidden techniques. Even at their peak, they could only release 2 types of forbidden techniques at most before their primordial spirit was exhausted. However, Su Zimo's primordial spirit had reached the level of a great emperor. With the help of the 4 heads and 8 arms, he was able to manifest 4 types of forbidden techniques at the same time. The Lord of Hell stopped looking down on Su Kei, and the cold smile on his face had long disappeared. Indeed, 1 or 2 forbidden techniques wouldn't pose much of a threat to him. However, when 4 types of forbidden techniques were unleashed at the same time, together with Araki Takashi's Qinglian bloodline and the battle secret technique, The chaotic world that was created could indeed unleash a heaven-defying power that could turn the tide of the battle. The Lord of Hell did not want to lose to an ordinary Emperor Realm expert who had just stepped into the Emperor Realm. The Lord of Hell activated his blood chi, and his entire body was filled with an eerie nether chi. The bloodline vision condensed behind him, and the white bone armor on his body burned. In the Hell world behind him, the Tao seal became clearer and clearer, and the aura of the Hell world continued to rise. The Lord of Hell was ready to face Su Zimo's next attack. At this moment he did not even notice that the situation was quietly changing. From him and Tao Wu joining forces to attack, to him and Tao Wu passively defending. At this moment the momentum of this battle was quietly leaning towards Su Zimo. Restriction of the immortal Tao. Su Zimo's hand fell, and he was the first to form the first type of forbidden technique. Restriction of the Buddhist Tao. Following closely behind, the second type of forbidden technique descended. Restriction of the demonic Tao. Restriction of Yin Yang. The third and fourth types of forbidden techniques were released almost at the same time. In the past 2,000 years, Su Zimo's cultivation had reached the boundary Emperor Realm, and now he had even stepped into the Emperor Realm. However, this was not his greatest gain in these years. It was his comprehension of various Tao techniques. Although the 5 grotto heavens had merged and evolved into the chaotic world, Su Zimo had comprehended 5 different types of forbidden techniques through the 5 grotto heavens before this. However, limited by his cultivation realm, these forbidden techniques were at most at the level of quasi-forbidden. At this moment he had stepped into the Emperor realm, and the power of his primordial spirit had skyrocketed, and he could finally release these forbidden techniques. Forbidden techniques consumed a lot of the primordial spirit, and with his Emperor-level primordial spirit, he could at most release 4 types of forbidden techniques at once. Even so, the 4 types of forbidden techniques descending almost at the same time created an extremely terrifying scene. The power of the 4 types of forbidden techniques caused the weather to change, and the starry sky to tremble. Even Fengdu's underworld world could not withstand it, and it seemed like it would collapse at any time. Su Zimo propped up the chaotic world and his chi and blood rose. The living soil of the 9 heavens, the Tri-Jade Rui scepter, the Tai Horsetail whisk, and the Qingping sword circled around him. He stepped on the river of time, and with the 4 types of forbidden techniques in his hands, he charged towards the Lord of Hell and Fengdu in front of him with a monstrous aura. At this moment, even the combined forces of the Lord of Hell and Fengdu were suppressed by Su Zimo alone in terms of aura. End of this chapter. Chapter 32-22. Boom, boom, boom. A series of earth-shattering collisions broke out in the battle between the 3 of them. The Lord of Hell and Fengdu kept retreating, completely at a disadvantage. The experts of the 10,000 races saw this scene and were greatly energized. Great Emperor Araki Takashi. Great Emperor Araki Takashi. The words, Great Emperor Araki Takashi, resounded in the 3,000 worlds again. The experts of the 10,000 races had seen the death of Wu Dao's original body with their own eyes. They had thought that the former great Emperor Araki Takashi had died and his soul had dissipated. Now they saw that Araki Takashi's original body of Qinglian could compete with a great emperor in the Emperor realm. He had even completely suppressed the Lord of Hell and Fengdu. This also meant that Su Zimo's combat power was now comparable to a great emperor's. I knew that the era of the 2 emperors wouldn't end so easily. Yes, although great Emperor Shuedai has fallen in this era, we still have great Emperor Araki Takashi to guard the middle world and protect the 10,000 races. The morale of the experts of the Heaven Wasteland domain, Sword domain, Blood Ape domain, and other experts was greatly boosted. On the other hand, the cultivators of the Hell Army, Blood domain, and Tomb domain were a little confused. They showed signs of defeat and began to retreat. Don't panic. Hold on. Fengdu's voice suddenly sounded. The outcome of this battle is still unknown. In fact, the Lord of Hell and Fengdu were suppressed by Su Zimo's attacks, but the Lord of Hell's world condensed an unshakable Tao seal after all. Su Zimo had just entered the Emperor realm, and even with the 4 great forbidden techniques, he couldn't destroy the Hell world. Just as the Lord of Hell said, the power between the Emperor realm and the Great Emperor realm was an almost insurmountable gap, like a moat. Fengdu had seen this point and made an accurate judgment. Su Zimo couldn't afford to continue this battle at all. The Hell world was connected to the river Styx and had endless treasures. No matter how great the consumption, the Lord of Hell could withstand it. But Su Zimo was different. The reason why he was able to unleash such terrifying battle prowess was not only because of his powerful blood chi and the four great forbidden arts, but also because of the secret techniques of ancient and modern battles. As for the secret techniques of the ancient and modern battles, they could last for 10,000 years in one breath. Even if Su Zimo had a lifespan of 50 million, the duration of the battle was limited. If this stalemate continued, Su Zimo would definitely lose. Araki Takashi. The Lord of Hell gradually got a chance to take a breather from Su Zimo's attacks. The smile on his face reappeared. He said slowly, "I've said it before. No matter how powerful the forbidden art is, it's only close to the Great Way. It can't affect my Taoist seal." Su Zimo did not say a word. His face was as calm as still water as he maintained his powerful offensive. The Lord of Hell sneered, "Araki Takashi, is this all you've got? How disappointing. The four forbidden techniques are nothing more than this." "Really?" Su Zimo suddenly asked. His four palms, which were originally empty, were once again forming hand seals. They constantly changed in midair and condensed into mysterious and profound seals. What he had comprehended over the years was not just the four forbidden techniques. Just the 5 grotto heavens alone had evolved into 5 different forbidden techniques. However, Su Zimo still had some misgivings in his heart, so he had been holding back. But now, if he could not suppress the Lord of Hell and Fengdu as soon as possible, the situation would be extremely disadvantageous to him. Thinking of this, Su Zimo did not hesitate anymore. He was prepared to use thunderous means to suppress the Lord of Hell and Fengdu first. Long swords fell from the sky and landed around the Lord of Hell and Fengdu. With the swords as tombstones, they formed sword tombs. This was the forbidden art that had evolved from the Daluo sword tomb. Other than the Daluo sword tomb, it also contained the white tiger devouring corpse, the 3 great sword techniques, and various other ultimate killing secret techniques. The combination of 10,000 techniques allowed Su Zimo to sense the Tao of massacre and comprehend this forbidden art of massacre. The 5th forbidden technique descended. The Lord of Hell and Fengdu's expressions changed drastically. It was not only because of the appearance of the 5th forbidden technique, but also because the killing power of this 5th forbidden technique was too strong. Originally, with the Lord of Hell in front of him, Fengdu was almost unharmed. But at this moment, even the Lord of Hell could not protect Fengdu. Slaughter was everywhere, and there was no way it could not penetrate. The forbidden art of massacre descended, and the killing power had already trapped the Lord of Hell and Fengdu, sealing all their exits. The appearance of the 5 forbidden techniques at the same time caused Su Zimo's attack to rise to another level. The Lord of Hell's pressure soared, and he could not care about Fengdu at all. Under the encirclement of the forbidden art of massacre, Fengdu's originally broken body was already riddled with holes and could collapse at any time. The Lord of Hell glanced at Fengdu. There was a complicated look in his eyes. The Lord of Hell did not say it explicitly, but he was telling Fengdu that he could not take care of himself and could no longer protect Fengdu. Even if Fengdu died, he would not die and would make a comeback in the future. The Lord of Hell used all his energy and mind to resist Su Zimo's attack, leaving Fengdu to fend for himself. As long as he continued to hold on and dragged on until Araki Takashi's lifespan ran out, he would be the final winner of this battle. Just as this thought came to his mind, under Su Zimo's 6th palm, another great Tao faintly appeared. This palm lightly slapped towards the Lord of Hell and Fengdu. It seemed soft and powerless, and it posed no threat. But the Lord of Hell and Fengdu felt a chill down their spines, and their expressions changed drastically. "Nank palm." The Lord of Hell and Fengdu exclaimed at the same time. How could it be? This was the evil emperor's secret technique. No, this was not Nank palm. It was just that this palm technique contained the power of the dream realm. This was the 6th forbidden technique that Su Zimo had comprehended, the forbidden dream realm. This forbidden technique was completely due to the earth-shattering war of the heavens 2,000 years ago. Not only had Su Zimo witnessed it with his own eyes, but he had also personally experienced it. In that battle, he had even accidentally released a similar Tao technique to kill young Master Shen Tian. The 6th forbidden technique descended, and it came from the evil emperor's forbidden dream realm. Although this forbidden dream realm was not as powerful as the evil emperor's Nank palm, it still affected the Lord of Hell and Fengdu greatly. The two of them suddenly felt dazed. The time was extremely short. Soon the two of them regained their senses. But it was during this moment of daze that the 7th forbidden technique descended. What? The Lord of Hell was shocked. Before he could react, he heard Su Zimo sigh softly. He did not even look at the Lord of Hell and Fengdu. At this moment, Su Zimo seemed to be in a daze. He recalled something and a heart-wrenching sadness flashed past his eyes. At that moment, a beautiful figure seemed to be reflected in Su Zimo's eyes. And this beautiful figure was lying in his arms. Her lifespan was exhausted, and she was gradually withering away. The seventh forbidden technique, withering. Forbidden time. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.